Chapter 291. Outside the Winterwood City Pit, Wu Ming and his group came here. Let's stop here for the time being. Wu Ming waved his hand and motioned for the group to stop moving forward. So do we need to attack directly, teacher? Young Gil put his hands behind his head and said in a relaxed and casual tone. No need, the other party has already noticed that we are here. Wu Ming shook his head. They are already at the door. How can the other party not notice that someone is coming? Wu Ming looked at the empty pit with a sarcastic expression. Still so pretentious, Ainsworth, is displacement magic really so omnipotent? Just after Wu Ming finished speaking, there was a slight change in the center of the big pit. Accompanied by spatial fluctuations, figures came out of the ripples one by one. Darius led Angelica, Beatrice, and a few strangers who had no consciousness in their eyes to walk out. Long time no see, Mr. Wu Ming. Darius greeted Wu Ming gently. Huh? Julian is not here? Shiro Amiya saw that Julian was not among the people who came out of the ripples and spoke subconsciously. Calm down, Shiro. I will tell you about Julian later. Wu Ming knew that although Julian had already broken up with Weigong Shiro, the things that happened between the two in the school before, and the friendship that developed between them, were all real. With Shiro Amiya's character, it was difficult for him to completely let go of Julian. After Shiro Amiya heard Wu Ming's words, he nodded and said nothing. He knew that this was a battlefield now. Looking back, Wu Ming looked at Darius. Well, long time no see, Darius. Wu Ming also responded gently with a smile. People who didn't know might think that the two were best friends who hadn't seen each other for many years. This is really fate. I remember the last time we met like this. Darius touched his chin with one hand and supported the hand that was touching his chin with the other hand as he thought carefully. You are really forgetful, Darius. The one who met me was your son, Julian Ainsworth. Yes, look at my memory, ha ha ha. In the face of Wu Ming's mistake, Darius clenched one fist and punched the other hand with a look of, I forgot to thank you for the reminder. After laughing for a moment, Darius said, Then the greetings are almost done. After Darius finished speaking, the few people behind him walked in front of Darius in unison. Their eyes were lifeless like robots. Same to you. Wu Ming narrowed his eyes. Come and see my latest card, Hienryong-sama. Darius bowed deeply to Wu Ming like a noble. However, to be honest, it was really disgusting. Install Dream Summon. Each of the dolls took out a class card and activated Dream Summoning. They stuck the class card on their bodies. Boom. Following their Dream Summon, a large amount of magical power erupted and impacted the surroundings. Every golem was wrapped in a huge pillar of light. The tornadoes created by the magic pillars kept blowing in the direction of Wu Ming and the others. Wu Ming and the others' clothes fluttered. Brother. Shiro Amiya took a step forward and said to Wu Ming with a serious expression. Don't worry, Shiro. Wu Ming stopped Shiro Amiya, who was a little emotional, and said, Let's see what the other party is up to. In fact, Wu Ming was worried that Darius had made a few class cards with special abilities. After all, the level of a noble phantasm was not the most important thing, but whether it could restrain a noble phantasm. Many times, a low-level noble phantasm could restrain many high-level noble phantasms. It was just like the relationship between Shakespeare and Joan of Arc in the Battle of 14 Nights that Wu Ming participated in. Shakespeare said it himself. We don't have the ability to fight. We can only pick up a pen and write to record this tragedy. She didn't know magic at all. She didn't have any skill in making props, and she could only build her own study room. She was a third-rate servant with no actual combat ability, but she was able to restrain Joan of Arc by relying on her noble phantasm. There should be a thunderous applause here. Fortunately, the aftermath of the battle between Wu Ming and Karna affected Shakespeare and Joan of Arc at that time. Otherwise, it would be terrible. However, Wu Ming estimated that with Joan of Arc's EX level of magical power, coupled with her unusually strong spirit. Having said that, faith was really a scary thing. For faith, Tianqiao lived for 60 years. For faith, Joan of Arc endured the first few rounds of spiritual destruction before Wu Ming broke Shakespeare's noble phantasm. Sure enough, faith was the way to go. Ahem, let's get back to the topic. Moreover, not only noble phantasms, But even servants had restraints. If Zhou Yu and Zhuge Liang appeared in the same Holy Grail war, Zhou Yu would be restrained by Zhuge Liang. The noble phantasm was sublimated from the legends of his life, so the cause of Zhou Yu's death, which was being controlled by Zhuge Liang, would definitely accompany him. Just like Karen's death rate when encountering something related to poison, it would greatly increase. Although Wu Ming didn't think that anyone could restrain him, it was difficult to guarantee that Shiro Amiya and the others would not be restrained. Don't worry, everyone. These cards are not targeted at your noble phantasm. These are just cannon fodder used in the battle. Darius saw the concerns of Wu Ming and the others, so he didn't care about the card-using puppets and spoke directly. You might as well send out your Black Mud Servant army. A group of guys without self-awareness. There's nothing to worry about. Wu Ming laughed. Wu Ming was not underestimating the enemy. That was the truth. No matter what they are, just wash them all away. God says humans are sinful. God says humans need to be purified. So send the monstrous flood to my body. In the name of the Supreme King, I will grant equal relief. As the spirit of speech finished speaking, the sky above Darius and the others seemed to be torn apart, and a hole was broken in space. Countless streams of water gushed out from this gap. However, when it was about to touch Darius and the others, a large purple magic array appeared and caught the water. Then a purple virtual frame gap appeared above Wu Ming and the others. The water that Wu Ming summoned was used by Darius in turn, directly replacing the space of two places. I have to say, the Ainsworth family's displacement magic is really the pinnacle of magic. Wu Ming praised the displacement magic. Thank you for your praise. Darius seemed to be proud of it and bowed to Wu Ming again. But my things are not so easy to control. The water that fell on Wu Ming and the others automatically dispersed when it was about to touch Wu Ming and the others. It fell to the ground and slowly flowed into the big pit. Because Wu Ming and the others were on a higher ground, and Darius and the others were on a lower ground, the water naturally flowed into the big pit. Aya, it seems that the substitution magic isn't working anymore. Darius laughed self-deprecatingly. Chapter 292. At this moment, the inside of the big pit in Winterwood City was filled with water. Only Wu Ming and the others were at the top of the big pit, and Darius and the others were at the center of the big pit, protected by displacement magic. Oh, Hyenryong, Sama, I didn't expect you to have such a godlike ability. Did you hide it last time? Darius said with a little excitement. Sorry, I didn't hide it. It's okay to tell you. This is a new ability I got from killing the gods of other worlds. Wu Ming answered Darius's question quite casually. God. Is that true, big brother? Wei Gongshi looked at his elder brother with an even more unusual gaze. Not only was Wei Gongshi like this, even Tong Ying and Bizet had a doubtful look on their faces. Only young Gil was quite excited. Good job, sensei. When will you kill those gods of Sumer mythology? Young Jill said such terrifying words with his beautiful face. Wu Ming didn't say anything about it. Not only Wu Ming knew, but young Gil also knew that the original gods were forced to enter a higher dimension after Kanagami's generation, and they could no longer interfere with the operation of the main world. In a sense, those gods were dead and killed by the world. Since Hyenryong, Sama has already made his move, then we can't be weak. With that said, Darius waved his hand, and one of the people who had completed the transformation using the class card raised the bow in his hand. The bow in his hand was very simple, and he was wearing a simple leather armor. He looked abnormally energetic, but his eyes, which were called the soul of a person, were very turbid. The puppet man received Darius's command, and like a machine, he drew the bow and arrow and aimed at the sky. Stella. The puppet man said softly without emotion, then released the bowstring, and the arrow flew to the sky. PFFF. After shooting the arrow, the man's body shattered into pieces. Then he turned into a broken automaton, and an archer class card turned into ashes. Is it a relic that will be thrown away once it's used? Wu Ming could tell that his opponent had to sacrifice himself to use the relic. As expected of Ainsworth, such a relic was usually quite powerful. Wu Ming raised his head to look at the arrow. After reaching the highest point, the arrow began to descend. As it descended, the power of the arrow increased bit by bit. With Wuming's senses, he could tell that once the arrow landed on the ground, it would explode with boundless power that could tear the earth apart. Shiro used Ajax to protect the two of them. Wuming made a prompt decision and asked Shiro Amiya to use his defensive relic. I don't need to worry about you. Then Wuming looked at young Gil. Ah, of course, at least I still have the ability to protect myself. Young Gil flicked his hair and waved his hand casually. That's it then. Immediately, Wuming took a step forward. Lightning, lightning, lightning. I am the conqueror who can defeat 1,000 with 1,000, and 10,000 with 10,000. Now for me, who is on the side of justice, please shine brightly, and give me divine power. Thou hast violated the contract and brought evil to the world. On the Lord's day, the sinner shall be punished. Crush his back, dig out his tendons, bones, hair, and brain, and trample on his blood and mud. If I am the one who cannot get close to the darkness, I will follow the Lord's words and destroy thee. In an instant, Wuming cancelled his flood incarnation and activated his thunder god incarnation and annihilation incarnation. Beep beep beep. Wuming's body began to flicker with red lightning that was so red it was frightening. Actually, if you dodge now, you should be able to avoid this noble phantasm. Young Gil kindly reminded him. That made Wuming laugh. If it's you, will you dodge it? Wuming asked. Of course not, as a king. There's no need to dodge an unknown clown's noble phantasm. Young Gil shook his head. I'm the same, my disciple. As the teacher of the ancient king, Wuming also had a trace of similarity with Gilgamesh. Wuming would directly trigger certain things that could be avoided. The unknown was what Wuming had always been searching for. That was also one of the points. However, Wuming was not an enemy that he would fight head-on. Otherwise, in Uruk, Wuming would not have left with Enkidu, but Wuming would have fought directly. At that time, although Wuming had not yet grown up, and his talent and physical fitness as the root dragon were still very poor, Wuming could still fight against these gods at the cost of his vitality. After all, Wuming was also the root dragon, and he had the strength to do so. In less than 50 years, Wuming was able to successfully awaken the root dragon's body from an ordinary boy to the point where he could kill gods. That was all thanks to the root dragon's bloodline. That was both a price and a benefit. They sacrificed the strength that other higher life forms were born with in exchange for unprecedented growth in just 50 or even 40 years. This might be the reason why the origin of origins, dragons were able to become peak existences that roamed the various worlds. However, Wuming seemed to have added the convenience provided by the root dragon's bloodline to his luck. In addition, Wuming did not dodge for the sake of Winterwood City. Judging by Wuming's naked eye, the arrow that was about to fall from the sky definitely had the power to blow up Winterwood City. Not to mention that Rin Dosaka and the others were still in Winterwood City. Wuming still had the attitude of saving the ordinary people if he could. If he was rich, he would help the world. If he was poor, he would take care of himself. That was the truth. Since I can't dodge, then I'll just melt this arrow that's comparable to a meteor. With that said, Wuming's lightning burst out and condensed into a lightning beam. It will crush all enemies in enmity, both humans and demons. Wuming chanted the Thunder God's incarnation's enhancement rune, which was a special spirit that could instantly enhance the power of the incarnation. This is my body. Boom. The red lightning pillar rushed straight towards the huge source of mana that was descending from the sky. When the two collided, an earth-shattering sound rang out. The white light covered everything, leaving only the residual sound of the explosion, and the violent wind caused by the collision of the authority and the noble phantasm. Chapter 293. When the light gradually disappeared, everyone opened their eyes. The strong hurricane caused by the collision of the relics caused the dust in the air to scatter. As the two relics collided and exploded in mid-air, it did not affect Winterwood City much. However, some of the flowers on the balcony and the signs on the street were blown off. Wuming used his magic to disperse the dust that was wrapped around his body. Behind Wuming, a purplish-red cherry blossom shield appeared in the shape of a ball, protecting the people inside. The cherry blossom shield turned into pure magic and dissipated, revealing Shiro Amiya, Sakura Madu, and Bazette. As for young Gil, he did not need anyone to protect him. Are you guys okay? Wuming turned around and asked. We're fine. What about you, big brother? Just now the Ro Ajax didn't manage to protect you. Although it was said that it did not protect him, it was actually Wuming's request. If everyone lost their vision, it would be dangerous. Moreover, Wuming also needed to deal with any attacks that might come back other than Stella, which was why he wasn't protected by the 7 blazing circles, Ro Ajax. My relic and the opponent's relic cancelled each other out. The only thing that was generated was a super strong storm. This wind is nothing to me. Wuming waved his hand, indicating that he was fine. If it was just the gust of wind that was stirred up just now, that little bit of power was nothing to Wuming. That was a terrifying attack just now. Bazette said with lingering fear. That's right. If the attack just now landed, let's not talk about whether I could protect you guys. The entire Winterwood City would disappear. Shiro Amiya agreed. What? What is that? At that moment, Sakura Madu suddenly pointed to the front and asked. Shiro Amiya and Bazette also looked to the front. Wuming was the first to discover it. A semicircular defensive wall, like an ice castle, covered the original location of Darius and the others. After the light produced by the explosion disappeared, Wuming discovered this water-blue ice prison that did not match the sand and dust on the battlefield. Wuming raised his eyebrows and stretched his hand to the side. The golden ripples wrapped around Wuming's right arm. Then, as if he was holding on to something, Wuming suddenly pulled his hand out of the golden ripples. The silver spear of the world tree appeared in Wuming's hand. Yggdrasil's vines were quite effective against the tortoise shell. My Yggdrasil. Along with the activation of the relic, the Yggdrasil spear was covered in green. Green vines grew from the body of the spear to the tip of the spear. Wuming maintained Yggdrasil's real name liberation status and changed his posture into a throwing position. He aimed at the ice prison and threw it hard. Shio dash. Yggdrasil penetrated the atmosphere and made a sound that broke through the sound barrier. Boom. The ice prison that the World Tree Divine Spear had fiercely attached to exploded violently, and countless vines grew out of the ice prison in a frenzy. A big hole was broken in the ice prison. Swish swish swish. Yggdrasil, who completed the task, returned to Wuming's hand and was firmly grasped by Wuming. Wuming put Yggdrasil back into the golden ripples and looked at Darius and the others in the ice prison. Your tortoise shell is not very good, Darius. Ha ha ha, Henryong-sama, you must be joking. Your spear has the ability to break through this relic. Darius was right. If one looked carefully, the vines triggered by Wuming's relic were all from the inside of the ice prison. No, it should be from the ice of the ice prison to the outside, just like a plant bud growing out of a stone. When Darius touched the relic, the ice prison turned into a rank card and he held it in his hand. 301 seconds Eternal Ice Palace. That's the name of this relic. What do you think? Not bad, right? Darius took the class card and showed it to Wuming and the others. Unfortunately, the class card did not have a class, nor any picture. 301 seconds Eternal Ice Palace? Young Gil frowned. What's wrong, Gil? Wuming looked at young Gil. In my memories and my treasury, there is no such precious artifact. Wuming certainly understood what young Gil meant. As the ancient king, Gilgamesh's Gate of Babylon contained almost all the prototypes of relic. As long as there was a relic that appeared before, it could be found in Gilgamesh's treasury. However, young Jill said that she had never heard of this 301-second Eternal Ice Palace, which was quite thought-provoking. It may also happen to be a relic that was not included in my Gate of Babylon, but the probability is somewhat unbelievable. Although the Gate of Babylon contained almost all the prototypes of relic, it was inevitable that there would be some left out. Almost all of them meant that it was not absolute. It was very likely that this relic was not included in Gilgamesh's treasury. But I don't believe that he would have a noble artifact that you don't have in your Gate of Babylon. Wuming looked at Darius again, who had a smile on his face. Maybe this is a relic that Darius created himself. Shiro Amiya, Sakura Madu, and Bazette all widened their eyes. Created his own relic. Is this really possible for modern people? Sakura Madu covered her mouth in disbelief. Well, after all, the one next to you has the ability to create relic. Wuming pointed at Bazette. Is Ms. Bazette so powerful? Sakura Madu looked at Bazette in surprise. Shiro Amiya also looked at this rather cold partner of his in a new light. Although I can create the backlight sword, it is entirely because I am the descendant of the inheritance germ protector family. Compared to your man who has begun to heroic spirit, I am still far behind. Bazette closed her eyes and said calmly to Sakura Madu. On the other hand, Tong Ying and Wei Gong Shiro's faces turned red. Wuming did not pay attention to the conversation between Shiro Amiya and the others. Instead, he looked at Darius, who had a new move. Well, since Sir Virtuous Dragon was able to break this precious artifact so easily, then these few cards are just showing off in front of an expert. As he spoke, Darius took out 2 more job rank cards without any pictures. Next, let's start the real stage performance, Hienryong-sama. After that, Darius walked into the transparent ripple behind him. Coincidentally, a large amount of black mud was constantly emerging from the transparent ripple. Zizi. Woo. Wuming. I've connected. Suddenly, a virtual screen appeared next to Wuming. On the screen were Kalis, Rin Enbin, and Livia, whose cheeks were red and swollen. Chapter 294. What did you two do just now? Wuming asked curiously when he saw that their cheeks were a little red. Nothing. Ahaha. Yeah, ha. Rin and Osaka and Livia waved their hands in a panic, then stared at each other fiercely. How could they say that they were slapped by each other, because they were fighting for the master position? Kalis bowed to Wuming. Master, due to the sudden explosion of a large amount of magic, our communication was temporarily disrupted, but it's fine now. Wuming nodded. The large amount of magic that Kalis was talking about should be the chaos caused by the collision of the relics. We're on our way to your location. We'll be there in about 5 minutes. Okay, I understand. Kalis, remember to keep an eye on these two. Don't let them cause any trouble. Wuming was still worried about Rin and Osaka and Livia. Yes, master. Kalis then turned off the communication. Wuming looked once again at the black mud that had already begun to spread, and at the few card users who were already rushing over. Shiro, Sakura, Bazette, start attacking the enemy. Remember not to touch the black mud, and protect yourselves first. Wuming noticed that the moment the black mud appeared, except for the puppets that had no self-consciousness, Angelica and Beatrice used displacement magic to separate their feet from the black mud. As for the puppets standing on the black mud, their bodies began to undergo some black changes. There was no doubt that the corrosive power of the black mud had reached its peak. Wuming could feel that the black mud that Julian released last time was nothing compared to this black mud. Understood. Bazette responded, and without waiting for Wuming to finish, he rushed toward the attacking enemies. Wuming raised his eyebrows, feeling helpless. You guys go too. Okay, big brother Oniai-sama. After that, Shiro Amiya covered his body with magic and turned into Amiya's costume. Sakura Madu took out the card that Wuming adjusted before and used Dream Summoning. Install Dream Summoning. The lower half of her body was a normal black armor, but the upper half of her body was a black armor that could only cover her chest. A black mask with only a slit covered her face, and a few lines that looked like electronic cables extended out from behind Midori Sakura. Red mana patterns also wrapped around his body. Even his black armor and mask had red mana patterns on them. Because of Wuming's modification, the black armor was slightly blue, and it didn't have the arrogance of Berserker. It was very suitable for Sakura Madu, a woman like Sakura Madu, to use it, and it could reflect Sakura Madu's beauty. Let's go together, senpai. Sakura Madu smiled at Shiro Amiya. Shiro Amiya reacted, but he didn't blush or even feel embarrassed, but he smiled and nodded. Let's go together, Sakura. Wuming looked at the two running away and shook his head helplessly. Really, you're still so lovey-dovey on the battlefield. However, Wuming smiled. Both of them had found a good home. Looking at the black mud followers that kept emerging from the black mud, Wuming opened his hands. Then let's begin, my followers. My followers, my servants, the time for war has come, so now, show your brave and fearless figure, for your master, for the king. Before the black mud had completely corroded the ground, the earth had already turned golden. 3-meter-tall steel golems walked up step by step, as if they were walking on a staircase. The iron golem that came up from the golden ground had a layer of faint golden light. That was the power of origin provided by Wuming. And those followers that emerged from the black mud had starlight that was as deep as the universe. That was the power of origin provided by the black mud. The power of origin had infinite changes, and there was no fixed form. Even Wuming, who was born from origin, couldn't clearly understand origin. Holy Grail! Holy Grail! Holy Grail! Countless black mud that couldn't be seen were like zombies, moving slowly in the direction of Wuming. These were the heroes that pursued the Holy Grail but didn't end well. Now they were eroded by the black mud, and became abnormal. Bang! An iron fist hit the black mud follower at the front. The iron golems under Wuming's command were inanimate and unconscious magic products. The level of the iron golems was not very high. They could only be used as cannon fodder in many top battles, and they were only level 70. However, these iron golems had great magic resistance and physical armor. Although their attack power was not very good, they were quite good as meat shields and delay time. Moreover, Wuming's origin dragon's aura was added, so these iron golems had a resistance and restraining attribute against the black mud followers. It was just an armed fist, but with a body that was 3 meters tall, the impact of the fist was not weak, and with the restraining attribute given by silent sound, the black mud followers that were attacked by the iron golem were all emitting black smoke, and they were in great pain. However, as a mutual restraint, the black mud followers could also completely subdue these iron golems with the origin dragon's attributes. Just like divinity, in general, divinity often had the power to add damage to everything. But if it encountered a weapon or power that restrained divinity, then the guy with divinity would be unlucky. One by one, the black mud followers pounced on the iron golems, and their huge bodies brought poor flexibility. The iron golems fell to the ground and were divided by the black mud followers, turning into pure magic power and disappearing. The black mud followers and the iron golems began to fight. At present, it seemed that the iron golems were obviously at a disadvantage, and their foundation was a lot worse. Sure enough, these iron golems alone can't fight against the followers. Even these cracked followers are the same. Wuming said in a tone that was expected. However, it's enough to hold them back. Suddenly, whoosh whoosh whoosh, the sound of something breaking through the air was heard. Wuming moved gently and dodged several noble phantoms. The noble phantoms fell to the ground, causing a violent explosion, and then turned into golden particles and disappeared. Wuming looked at the place where the noble phantoms were shot. Angelica stretched out a hand, and several golden ripples appeared on the gate of Babylon behind her. We meet again, Hianriyang, Angelica said coldly. Wuming looked at Tong Ying and Bizet, who were being held back by several puppet-level card users, and Wei Gongshiro, who was being held back by Beatrice. Then Wuming looked at Angelica again. You're going to be defeated by me, and you're lucky that you didn't die. Why, do you still want to try your luck? On the contrary, Angelica, who was usually emotionless, expressed her feelings this time. I want to defeat you, Sensei. Angelica's originally emotionless eyes revealed a desire to fight. I see. Are you seriously affected by Gilgamesh's card? Wuming saw Angelica's current state. Gilgamesh was originally a top-level heroic spirit. Theoretically, even if he was eroded by the black soil, he should be able to maintain his consciousness and not disappear. However, the black soil was not ordinary black soil. It was black soil that was mixed with the root dragon's aura and had the power of the root. This caused the meaning of Gilgamesh's card that Angelica used to be basically clear. However, even if Gilgamesh had lost his consciousness, his power was not something that ordinary people could use. Angelica was subconsciously affected. Coupled with her previous experience of failure, it caused Angelica to be obsessed with Wuming. No matter how you look at it, it's your fault, Gil. Wuming looked at young Gil, who was standing at the side without moving. You can't blame me for this, Sensei. It's natural for the disciple to surpass the master. We've never fought before. It's understandable that my lower body wants to surpass you. If you want to blame someone, blame it on being my mentor, sensei. Young Gil waved his hand and pushed the blame to Wu Ming. Wu Ming smiled. If that's the case, then I'll fight you as Hyunryong, Gilgamesh's mentor, Angelica. Chapter 295. Swish, swish, swish. Countless relics shot towards Wu Ming from Angelica's back. Boom, boom, boom. Wu Ming dodged the relics one after another as he moved towards Angelica. The relics behind Wu Ming exploded violently, causing smoke and dust to fill the air. Young Jill, on the other hand, was watching the battle between Wu Ming and Angelica with interest from a high vantage point. Is he going to fight as Hyunryong's mentor? I remember that my mentor taught me about combat. Does this mean that my mentor is going to fight with my lower body as a warrior? Young Gil sat cross-legged on the platform with his hands supporting his chin. How nostalgic! Just as young Gil expected, Wu Ming, who was almost in front of Angelica, took out Yggdrasil from the golden ripples at the side. Tisk! Angelica frowned and snorted unhappily. Subsequently, the golden ripples behind Angelica increased in number. Swish, swish, swish. However, Wu Ming, who had obtained the weapon, began to display his endless martial arts skills. Clang, 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 clang. Wu Ming controlled Yggdrasil and displayed the martial arts skills that he had learned from the Mirror Queen, Skaha. Countless relics that were shot towards Wu Ming were deflected. There was nothing fancy or beautiful about it. It was merely a display of martial arts skills to achieve a goal. There were not many fancy moves in the art of killing. The only goal was to kill the enemy. On the other hand, Wu Ming, who had bounced off countless relics, was getting closer to Angelica. Suddenly, a gap appeared in front of Wu Ming, who was moving forward. In an instant, Wu Ming was transported far away. After dodging a few relics, Wu Ming stood firm and looked at Angelica. In a sense, the Ainsworth family's displacement magic is really cheating. Wu Ming leaned on Yggdrasil and said helplessly, "Ha ha ha. I didn't say that I'm going to fight you as Gilgamesh, mentor." Young Gil, who was in the sky, laughed heartily. Angelica did not agree, but did not refute either. "Well, you're right. It's on me this time." Wu Ming smiled. "Then let's start the next round." Wu Ming's eyes suddenly became sharp. A few lune runes appeared and wrapped around Wu Ming's body. Coming. In an instant, Wu Ming's speed became extremely fast and almost reached supersonic speed. Angelica continuously released her relic, but she could only hit Wu Ming's. If that's the case. Angelica opened two parallel spaces behind her, allowing countless relics to constantly move between the two spaces created by the displacement magic, making the relics in the Gate of Babylon accelerate without limit. In an instant, Angelica cancelled the displacement magic, and countless relics burst out at supersonic speed toward Wu Ming. Clang, clang, clang. Although Wu Ming was hit, Wu Ming's reaction was still able to bounce them away. Yggdrasil. In an instant, Wu Ming performed primary release on Yggdrasil and threw it toward Angelica. The World Tree God's spear rubbed against the air and shot toward Angelica by leaps and bounds. Hum! Accompanied by a faint sound, the space in front and behind Angelica was replaced. Yggdrasil in primary release was just a holy spear with a fierce impact and vitality. It didn't have any extra attributes. Yggdrasil passed through the space and slammed into the ground, causing a violent explosion. The wind caused by the explosion blew Angelica's ponytails, making them flutter in the wind. "Your relic doesn't work, Hyunryong." Angelica still looked indifferent, then used the sword. That was Wu Ming, who had taken out X-Silver from the golden ripple. X-Silver. Wu Ming performed primary release on X-Silver. In an instant, light gathered on the sword, and X-Silver turned into a huge light sword. As Wu Ming uttered the true name, the lightsaber was violently swung out. The dazzling light rushed toward Angelica. Clang, 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 clang. Shields emerged from the Gate of Babylon behind Angelica and fell to the ground. The shields were stacked on top of each other, forming a shield relic. Boom. The light cannon bombarded the shield, making a loud noise. Angelica dispersed the shield and looked at Wu Ming. "I've been waiting for you." Wu-Ming suddenly got in through the gap between the scattered shields and raised the holy sword toward Angelica. Wu-Ming used the light and sound of the light cannon as a cover, blocking Angelica's vision and hearing, sneaking in front of the shield, waiting for an opportunity to attack. Don't even think about it. Angelica was shocked, but fortunately, she was vigilant in advance and instantly used displacement magic again. Because the preparation was a bit hasty, this time displacement magic only replaced a small space. It only replaced the space at the tip of the meteor silver and the space behind Wu-Ming. But, if it was me in the past, I might have fallen for it, Wu-Ming suddenly said. Just as the meteor silver was about to enter the space, a golden ripple suddenly appeared in front of the meteor silver. As Wu-Ming leaned forward, the entire meteor silver was swallowed by Wu-Ming's space relic, Dragonist. Pa. Wu-Ming's hands entered the space and came out from the space behind Wu-Ming, hitting Wu-Ming's back. Wu-Ming smiled when he felt that he had punched himself. It feels good to massage my own back. However, Wu-Ming's weapon was gone. Angelica naturally wouldn't let go of such a good opportunity. I didn't expect the famous master Hienryong to make such a low-level mistake. As Angelica spoke to me, countless golden ripples surrounded Wu-Ming and relics appeared one after another. No, how could that be? Wu-Ming smiled. I see. It's that move. Young Gil, who was sitting in the sky with his legs crossed, recalled something and said with interest. Since young Gil had already recalled it, it didn't make sense that Angelica, who was subconsciously influenced by Gilgamesh, didn't notice the lower half of young Gil's body. Angelica looked at Wu-Ming's smile and felt a strong sense of uneasiness. It seems like Gilgamesh's card power has sensed something, Wu-Ming said, but he didn't let go of his hand. Wu-Ming clenched his fist and countless vines broke out from the ground and entangled Angelica. Yggdrasil, who was not far behind Angelica, had already activated his relic and was ready for battle. Swoosh! The sound of chains was heard and a few golden chains entangled Angelica, sealing her magical power. In just a few breaths, Hienryong had subdued his disciple, the Hero King. Chapter 296. Here you go, Angelica. With that said, Wu-Ming put his hand on Angelica's stomach. Wu-Ming exerted force, and Angelica's whole body glowed. Ah! The pain of being stripped of her class card made Angelica moan. When the light dissipated, Angelica, who was bound by Enkidu and vines, changed her clothes into a set of home clothes. And Wu-Ming had an extra card in his hand. Archer. Wu-Ming read the name on the class card. This class card was Gilgamesh's upper body. Wu-Ming threw it behind him indifferently, and a small hand caught the card. The owner of the hand was young Gil, who had already come down from the floating platform in the sky. You've really helped me a lot, teacher. Young Gil looked at the class card in his hand happily. Okay, I've found your upper body for you. Be a good audience and watch this farce. Wu-Ming knew his disciple well. Once he regained his real body, it was hard to say what would happen. Yes, I didn't want to participate this time. I'm still very interested in the comedy between teacher and clowns. You have a bad taste. Wu-Ming raised his eyebrows. By the way, what are you going to do with this woman? Young Gil pointed at Angelica with interest. In this regard, Wu-Ming fell into silence. On the other side, Shiro Amiya and Beatrice. Don't run, come and fight with me. Beatrice was like a psychopath, madly roaring at Shiro Amiya, laughing, and constantly smashing Mjolnir in her hand at Shiro Amiya. I'm sorry, but I know my limits. If I'm hit by this hammer, I'll be finished. Shiro Amiya jumped, dodging the incoming giant hammer, and the surging lightning on the giant hammer. Hee-hee-ha-ha-ha. Then why don't you just obediently die? However, Beatrice did not care about Shiro Amiya at all. She just kept attacking Shiro Amiya. TSK, this power isn't something that a simple person can possess. Wei Gong Shirling once again dodged a lightning strike by a hair's breadth, and said while panting heavily. However, the user is a berserker. Beatrice was now like a berserker. She laughed wildly and controlled the Mjolnir in her hand to attack crazily. If that's the case, then I'll kill him in one strike. Instantly, Shiro Amiya's eyes turned cold. Race on projection began. Shiro Amiya's feet suddenly stopped, and he quickly turned and ran toward Beatrice. You finally stopped running? Then go to hell. Beatrice looked at Shiro Amiya, laughed, raised the Mjolnir, and began to charge. Immediately, Shiro Amiya waved his hand, and blue lines lit up on his body. Several noble phantoms appeared out of thin air, and shot toward Beatrice. It's completely useless. Beatrice smirked as she swung the Mjolnir that was still charged with electricity down on the ground. Several noble phantoms made by Shiro Amiya were directly smashed and disappeared. Race on projection begin. In an instant, Wei Gong Shiro raised one of his hands, and a gigantic sword that was as tall as the heavens and the earth was projected. Is it a Galima? Beatrice recognized the huge weapon at a glance. Beatrice once saw it in Angelica's treasure house. That weapon was one of the two swords held by Zabarba, the god of war in Mesopotamia. It was a noble phantasm called Igialima, the green horizon of 1,000 mountains. There's one in Angelica's treasury as well, but it seems like yours is just a fake that imitates its appearance. Beatrice did not retreat, but went forward and slammed the Mjolnir in her hand on the fake Igalama. Boom. Crack. Igalama and Mjolnir collided with each other, and with a cracking sound, Igalama was directly smashed by Mjolnir. Ha 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 ha, it's great. That's great. Beatrice laughed maniacally as she stood on the mountain-slicing sword that was stabbed into the ground. Beatrice, who was laughing, suddenly found that Shiro Amiya was gone. Are you going to play hide-and-seek this time? Hee hee, Beatrice said with a smile. It's the mouse that eats the cat. Shiro Amiya's voice came from behind Beatrice. Beatrice turned her head and saw Shiro Amiya holding a black bow with a strange spiral arrow on it. The moment Beatrice turned her head, Shiro Amiya let go of the bowstring. Boom. The spiral sword exploded, and the flame buried Beatrice. The wind set off by the explosion blew Shiro Amiya's robe. It seemed that Beatrice had disappeared in the flame. However, Shiro Amiya did not let down his guard. Very good. That's it. Resist and then be crushed under my feet. Beatrice rushed out of the flame, shouting excitedly, and her expression became more and more ferocious. Beatrice rushed directly to Shiro Amiya. Ajax blazing 7 circles. Shiro Amiya opened the cherry blossom shield with one hand, blocking Beatrice's hammer attack. Although it seemed that the injury was not light, Beatrice became more and more courageous. She chased after Shiro Amiya and hit him all the way. Each petal was as thick as an ancient city wall. 7 petals. Looking at the rapidly decreasing petals, Shiro Amiya sighed again. You're really a berserker. You're really as difficult to deal with as a cockroach. You're the same. You're as difficult to deal with as a mouse. Although Beatrice said that, she did not stop her actions. Her Mjolnir kept hammering the 7 blazing rings Ajax madly. Boom. The last petal broke, and the cherry blossom shield in Shiro Amiya's hand was broken. Die. Beatrice's eyes flashed fiercely, and the lightning on Mjolnir suddenly exploded, carrying out a fatal blow. However, Shiro Amiya only projected a pair of black and white dual swords. Crane wings fall no, mine skill mount Tai, mine skill crossing the Yellow River, mine skill receiving heaven. 2 heroes share the same fate. The dual swords that were less than a meter long changed shape, and became a pair of black and white dual swords that were more than a meter long like 2 wings. A few red lights flashed in the smoke behind Beatrice. Random. Triple-linked crane wings triple combo. Slash. The sound of the blade cutting through flesh was heard. 2 pairs of ferocious wing blades, together with the pair of long swords in Shiro Amiya's hands, cut through Beatrice's body. Shiro Amiya used the smoke and flames of the explosion produced by the pseudo-spiraling sword to hide the other 2 pairs of Moi swords. When Beatrice was focused on Shiro Amiya and thought that she had won, he launched a sneak attack from behind and successfully took down Beatrice. Shiro Amiya's dual swords were on the neck of Beatrice, who was paralyzed on the ground and could not stand up, and said condescendingly, "Now you're a general, berserker." Chapter 297. The scene changed. Wuming looked at Angelica and thought carefully. Young Gil looked at Wuming and Angelica with interest. I originally wanted to kill her directly." At this moment Wuming, who had been silent for a long time, spoke. Wuming did not lie. When Angelica and Beatrice came to Ilia's parallel world together, Wuming opened the inherent barrier with the idea of blasting them into pieces. Although he also did not want young Gil to obtain half of his body. As the saying goes, things are constantly changing. I've been abandoned by Lord Darius. Now, I'm an abandoned person. You can kill me or cut me up as you wish. Angelica looked at him. Oh, you're quite self-aware. Young Gil's smile became even brighter. Obviously, young Gil had also seen through Angelica's identity as an abandoned person. Wuming was the same. It would be better to say that Wuming discovered that Angelica was an abandoned person earlier than young Gil. It was Darius's order to go to the parallel world to capture Mayu. However, only Angelica and Beatrice were sent to capture her. After all, Darius had several new puppet subordinates by his side. There was no need to send out Angelica, who had Gilgamesh's card, and Beatrice, who was suspected to have Thor's card. Most importantly, Wuming did not believe that Darius did not guess that Wuming would be by Mayo's side. Knowing that Wuming was there, Darius still sent a team of only 2 people to the parallel world. It was obvious that these 2 were already dispensable abandoned people. Well, since you've already accepted your fate, then stay here obediently. After everything is over, I'll deal with you. Wuming said simply, then controlled the vines and Enkidu to release Angelica. As for Angelica, she stood there obediently as if she was a captive, not moving at all. Seeing this scene, Wuming frowned in disgust. Of course, he did not hate Angelica, but he hated Ainsworth's displacement magic. Angelica's identity was already known. She was Julian's sister, the eldest daughter of the Ainsworth family. She died when Black Mud was released by Darius, and was then replaced by the displacement magic. Unlike the puppet that Wuming saw before, it was full of emotions and selfishness like Atlam. Instead, it was a puppet that took the master's orders as the highest order. On the other hand, the puppets that Tong Ying and Bazette fought against were of a lower level. They were emotionless, irrational, and selfless. It could be said that they were purely used for the class card to possess them and act as combat power. Tricks that played with souls, no matter which world it was in, would be punished by the heavens. Zelik once talked to Wuming that the Ainsworth family had something to do with the crisis of the world's destruction. In addition, Darius was the ancestor of the Ainsworth family, and he lived to this day. Wuming didn't believe that he had no ulterior motives. And such a family that played with souls. Even if the descendants wanted to change, it was already impossible. Julian, who was almost completely replaced, was the result. Aria's father, sister, and everyone in his family had all died in the disaster that had happened almost 6 years ago. It was also during that disaster that Julian began to be replaced by Darius. As for the so-called Erica Ainsworth, she was of a higher level than Darius. Wuming suspected that if Zelik didn't save the world, the restraints would probably send people to destroy the Ainsworth family. Wuming shook his head helplessly. If you can, try to make yourself smile. Then, Wuming walked in the direction of Shiro, Amiya, and the others. Angelica was stunned. She touched her face. Smile, huh? Young Gil looked at the puppet and shook his head. As expected, there will be a day when you get tired of toys. Then young Gil followed Wuming's footsteps. Only Angelica, who was ordered to stay put, stayed on the spot alone. Nehrer, later to arrive first. Bazette abruptly used his fist to push out the dagger that had revealed its true form. Flagelak, slash of the war god. Thud. This was the sound of the exhausted backlight sword falling to the ground. Plop. This was the sound of the puppet opposite Bazette who used the class card falling to the ground. At this point, the class card users who surrounded Bazette and Sakura Madu were all killed. This should be all the enemies. Bazette moved his body that was a little stiff from using the backlight sword too many times. Yes, Miss Bazette. I'm also done here. Sakura Madu walked over from the side and said politely, looking at the wreckage of the backlight sword on the ground. Even the usually serious Bazette's mouth twitched. Almost all the backlight swords in my inventory were used up. Bazette comforted himself, but it was worth it after all. It wasn't a loss. These people have become puppets without any sense of self. It's so sad. Sakura Madu looked at the simple automatons on the ground and said sadly, however, because they don't have any sense of self, we can turn the tide under the attack of so many enemies. Bazette tidied up his clothes and picked up the cylinder that was used to store the backlight sword. Now the cylinder was completely empty. No matter what, there were multiple servants. Even if Bazette could use the backlight sword to offset a servant's noble phantasm, facing many servants, Bazette couldn't use several backlight swords at the same time. If these servants used their noble phantasm at the beginning, Bazette and Sakura Madu might really die here. That's right. I hope these people's souls can go smoothly and not be used by bad people. Sakura Madu prayed. At this time, Shiro Amiya came to Sakura Madu's side. How is it, Sakura? Is it over? Shiro Amiya carried a red-haired loli who was unconscious and held a berserker class card in his hand. Yes, Senpai also defeated the enemy. Are you injured? Sakura Madu asked Shiro Amiya with concern. Shiro Amiya shook his head. I'm fine, but this person was not injured by my fatal attack, so I directly knocked her out, and the class card came out. As he spoke, Wei Gongshi waved the rank card in his hand. In short, Senpai is fine. Sakura Madu's face under the mask showed a smile, looking at Shiro Amiya. Shiro Amiya was a little embarrassed, and his cheeks were red. Is everyone okay? At this time, Wu Ming came. We're fine. Bazette looked at the black mud and steel battle that was still going on in the distance and said, Oniai-sama. Sakura Madu bowed to Wu Ming. It was obvious that Sakura Madu was not injured. Brother. Shiro Amiya took the red-haired loli and the class card in his hand in front of Wu Ming. Sure enough, she is the same as Angelica, a non-degraded version of the class card. Wu Ming took the class card and then looked at the unconscious Beatrice. Just when Wu Ming wanted to say something, the virtual screen from Shoasuke's residence suddenly appeared. Rin and Osaka's slightly anxious face appeared. Wu Ming, hurry up and leave that place. I've detected a large amount of magic power condensing here. Chapter 298. Wu Ming and the others set off, while Rin Enbin and the others entered the control room. Rin Enbin and Livia stood in front of the control room with their arms crossed, while Livia stood elegantly in front of the control room. Neither of them spoke. Kalas floated between the two, waiting helplessly for them to move. Ms. Rin, Ms. Livia, please hurry into the control room. Master needs backup. Kalas' cold voice sounded. Yeah, you're right. Wu Ming needs my backup. Rin Enbin proudly flipped her twin ponytails. What a joke, Rin Enbin. I'm afraid that you don't even know how to activate it. What if you press the wrong button? Wouldn't Wu Ming's magic workshop be destroyed? Livia looked at Rin provocatively. Don't worry, I'm very honest. I'm not like some blonde girl who only knows how to show off. Rin Enbin and Livia looked at each other. It was as if sparks were flying between them. The battle between their gazes was abnormally intense. Humph. I won't argue with you today. Rin Enbin finished speaking and walked into the control room. I should be the one saying that. Livia caught up with Rin Enbin and walked into the control room together. However, the control room's door couldn't accommodate the two of them at the same time. Thus, the awkward situation of the two of them being stuck in the middle of the door was created. Get out of my way. You're the one. You barbaric monkey. The two of them were like contestants in a competition. They pressed their palms against each other's palms. Their crazed faces were pressed tightly against each other. Kalas was silent. A pair of wings grew out of her dragon horn headwear. Smack. Smack. Kalas retracted her wings and spoke elegantly. Ladies, please enter the control room in an orderly manner. I was sent by Master to supervise the two of you. If you don't listen, I have the right to continue my actions. Rin Enbin and Livia covered their swollen faces with tears in their eyes. How dare you hit my face? Really, how can you treat ladies like this? Rin and Osaka and Livia protested. In the blink of an eye, Kelly spread out her wings. Ah, Livia, you go in first. No. Ling, you go first. The moment they saw the pair of wings, the two of them became like a loving family. and began to be courteous to each other. Please hurry up. Kalas's voice was mixed with a trace of annoyance. This time, Rin and Osaka and Livia stopped being modest and entered the control room in an orderly manner. Kalas followed him in the air. Coincidentally, this scene was seen by Ilya, Blackie, and Mayu, who had entered the Shoyu residence with curiosity. Unexpectedly, I feel that Miss Kalas is very dignified. She doesn't look like a ruby at all. Ilya looked at the ruby floating beside her with disdain. Mayu and Little Hay nodded in agreement. Even Sapphire nodded humanely after a moment of silence. Wait. What do you mean you don't look like me at all? I'm a negative teaching material. Also, forget about Mayu and Little Hay. Little Blue actually bullied me with Ilya. Woo-woo. After saying that, Ruby turned around like a human and let out a sobbing sound. Sister, please be more reserved. Don't be so embarrassing. Sapphire comforted her with a tone of it's so troublesome to have a childish solution. Also, Senior Emerald is indeed more dignified than you. As expected of Master Wuming's exclusive magic attire. She's as reliable as Master Wuming. This time, it was Ilya's turn to be embarrassed. I feel like Sapphire means that I, the one with the ruby, am unreliable. Are we really going in? Mayu raised her hand and asked. Mayu, Ilya, and Little Hay came here to see the magic workshop's activation. Of course, Mayu was instigated by Little Hay and Ilya. Of course we're going in. Otherwise, why are we here? Little Hay waved her hand, expressing helplessness. Yes, Mayu, since we're here, I think it should be fine for us to go in and take a look. Ilya said embarrassedly. But the control room is the core of Brother Wuming's magic workshop. Even if Sister Ling and Sister Livia went in, they were accompanied by Kalas. The last visit was also accompanied by Brother Wuming. It's not good for us to go in like this. Mayu felt that Wuming didn't tell Mayu and others about the existence of the control room, because of the importance of the control room. So with her two little friends' instigation, Mayu still felt a little nervous. It's alright since Big Brother was able to let Ling and Livia, these two rash brats, into the control room. I'm sure he'll be on guard against them. We're not like them, not to mention, isn't Kelly still inside? While speaking, Xiaohei pushed Mio and pushed her towards the control room. I know, don't push me, Mayu said with a red face. At this time, the Shoyu residence shook. Mayu, Little Hay, do you feel the vibration here? Ilya, who was standing in the same place, said in detail. It must be said that although Ilya was very rash and sometimes like an idiot, she was often the first to discover something. Last time when Bizet attacked Livia's house, it was Ilya who first noticed the vibration and felt that something was wrong. Only then did Ilya pull Little Hay to Livia's house. Is there? I didn't feel it. Me too. Little Hay and Mayu stopped and shook their heads. At this time, rumble. The Shoyu residence shook violently as if there was a great earthquake. What happened? What's going on? Earthquake. Ilya, Little Hay, and Mayu were all shaken by this great vibration and fell to the ground. Ling and Livia must have done something in the control room. Little Hay made a prompt decision. He immediately got up and rushed toward the control room. Wait, Little Hay. Ilya called out to Little Hay and got up from the ground. Mayu did the same. She immediately got up and chased after Little Hay with Ilya. Ling. Livia. What are you doing? Little Hay rushed into the control room and started shouting. After shouting, Little Hay was stunned. Wait, Little Hay. Ilya caught up from behind. Then Ilya and Mayu were also stunned. The control room that was originally like a laboratory was now shining with starlight, as if it was a magical technology. Every instrument emitted a light that could penetrate one's heart. The twisted wand floated and emitted a 7-colored light. The simple and unadorned book emitted a dazzling light like the stars. Rin Enbin and Livia were standing in front of the big screen in the center. Rin Enbin and Livia were communicating with Wuming on the screen. When they saw Ilya and the others come in, they asked in confusion, "Why did you come in?" Chapter 299. Rin and Osaka and Livia stepped back, leaving Kalas to talk to Wuming. Rin and Osaka and Livia greeted the three Lolas. Sister Rin, Sister Livia, what was the earthquake just now? Ilya asked shyly as she told them about the violent tremors that happened just now. It might be because Wuming and the others were fighting with the enemy, ahahaha. That's right, looks like the enemy is very strong, ahahaha. Rin and Osaka and Livia pretended to be calm as they laughed. It's suspicious. Little Black stared at Rin and Osaka and Livia with a scrutinizing gaze. Then Little Black retracted his gaze. Well, I'll trust you this time. Rin and Osaka and Livia, who pretended to be calm, secretly let out a sigh of relief. At this time, the conversation between Kalis and Wuming entered their ears. We're on our way to your location, and will arrive in about 5 minutes. Kalis reported to Wuming. Okay, I understand. Kalis, remember to keep an eye on these two and don't let them cause any trouble. Yes, Master. Kalis immediately turned off the communication. The dragon horn headdress turned around. Even though it didn't have eyes, Kalis's intimidating gaze made Rin and Osaka and Livia feel a chill. Then Kalis opened her mouth. Although due to Miss Rin and Miss Livia's improper operation, the workshop isn't operating normally, but for now, the lunar temple is operating normally. Then, Kalis floated to the central platform and sat down steadily. Miss Rin and Miss Livia, please go to your designated location. The lunar temple is moving towards Master. Yes. Rin and Osaka and Livia said with enthusiasm, and immediately got to work. Miss Kalis is still quite dignified. Seeing this scene, Ilya once again expressed her opinion. By the way, how is the thing moving towards Big Brother moving? Fly or teleport? Xiaohei asked with great interest. Regarding this, Miss Chloe can go to the control room and take a look through the window. Kalis' voice sounded. With puzzled expressions, Blackie, Mayu, and Ilya left the control room. As soon as they stepped out of the control room, the three of them found that the original Japanese-style structure of the Shoasuki residence had changed into a futuristic blue color. This is. Ilya's heart was filled with shock. There's a window over there. Xiaohei pointed somewhere. Although it had become sci-fi, the internal structure of the Shoyu residence had not changed much. Little Black casually found a window and opened it. Then he led Mayu and Ilya to lie on it and look outside. What the three of them saw was a misty sky and a house the size of a toy on the ground. At this moment, the Shoyu residence had changed from its original square residence to an ancient temple that resembled an airship. As for the insignificant changes to the internal structure, it could only be attributed to spatial technology. Is it flying? Blackie, Ilya, and Mayu were all shocked. Is this what Big Brother meant by being able to fly? It's really amazing. Ilya had a look of excitement. What do you guys think? Mayu, Blackie. Yeah. Mayu said indifferently to express her agreement. Moreover, Mayu's eyes that were filled with pleasant surprise showed that Mayu's heart was not calm. Look. At this moment, Blackie pointed somewhere below. Mayu and Ilya looked over. It was at the side of Winterwood City. There was a huge crater. From the center, a large area of black soil and a large area of golden soil surrounded the black soil covered the huge crater. That's not black soil, but black mud. Mayu looked at these things and said thoughtfully. Although Mayu had never seen it before, Wuming had once told Mayu stories about the battle between Wuming and Ainsworth. Through her own judgment, coupled with her high-altitude vision, Mayu was able to guess that it was black mud. It really seems to be black mud. Is this the black mud that Big Brother said absolutely cannot be touched? Ilya leaned forward and said while looking into the huge crater. Those fighting with Big Brother's iron golem should be the black mud followers that Big Brother mentioned. Blackie pointed at the indistinct figure that was fighting with the iron golem at the intersection of the black mud and golden soil. Brother Wuming and the others are also there. Mayu saw Wuming, Shiro Amiya, and the others who had defeated the enemy and stood together. At this moment, the originally open window suddenly closed. This startled the three of them. Maybe something happened. Let's go to the control room and take a look. Blackie said and took the lead to run to the control room. As soon as they entered the control room, Ilya and the others heard Rin Enbin's voice. Wuming, you guys quickly leave there. A large amount of magic is being detected here. The screen in front of Rin Enbin showed the image of Wuming and the others. Although Rin Enbin said so, Wuming shook his head. There's no need. After that, Wuming turned his head and looked at the center of the crater. In the center of the crater, where Darius had disappeared, there was something strange. The black mud followers that were about to win suddenly stopped and turned into black mud and merged into the black mud on the ground. Like a tsunami, black mud burst out from the center of the crater and spread out at an astonishing speed towards the surroundings of the crater. It was estimated that it would take a few seconds to return to Wuming. This feeling, what is this? Ilya looked at the black mud through the screen and felt the trembling in her soul. Not only Ilya, but also Blackie, Mayu, Rin Enbin, Luvia, and the others felt the malice from their soul. Rin Enbin and the others began to tremble through the screen, not to mention Shiro Amiya and the others who were at the scene. Wuming stretched out his hand and Enkidu appeared and tied up Shiro Amiya and the others. Then, Wuming took them into the air. Rin used the teleportation device to retrieve Shiro and the others. Wuming looked at the screen floating beside him and said to Rin Enbin. As for the young Gil, Wuming didn't see him before. Rin Enbin nodded and shouted to Luvia on the other side. Luvia. Understood. Then, a small opening opened at the bottom of the lunar temple that was close to the big hole. A device similar to a signal receiver extended out. The device lit up. At the same time, Shiro Amiya and the others' bodies also lit up. In an instant, Shiro Amiya and the others disappeared. They had been taken back by the lunar temple. Big brother, is it really okay to leave one person behind? Shiro Amiya, who was teleported to the control room, quickly came in front of the screen and said to Wuming in a worried tone. Ilya and the others were also very worried. Especially Mayu. She was about to cry. In comparison, this thing could make one's soul tremble. Don't worry, this black mud can't do anything to me. Wuming said gently and told Mayu and the others not to worry. Gradually, the remaining iron golems on the battlefield were swallowed up. Flying in the air, Wuming saw Angelica, who was still in a daze. Heaven Lock, Enkidu, extended and silent cry pulled Angelica, who was about to be touched by the black mud, up. At this point, the black mud completely covered the big hole and swallowed all the iron golems. Chapter 300. Wuming helplessly hugged Angelica, who was dragged up by the Heaven Lock. I told you to stay put, and you really stayed put. Don't you know how to move when danger comes? However, Angelica calmly looked at Wuming. As a puppet, I have to follow orders. Looking at Angelica's serious and stubborn eyes, he felt even more helpless. Rin, help me teleport her back to the lunar temple. Wuming decisively said to the screen that was still open. Are you sure? Rin Enbin was confused. Although Rin Enbin had never seen Angelica before, she was undoubtedly an enemy. She has already died once in Mount Yuzong. I killed her. There is no need to kill her a second time. Then, Wuming looked at Beatrice, who was thrown to the side by Shiro Amiya. When Wuming tied up Shiro Amiya and the others with Heaven Lock, Enkidu, Shiro Amiya grabbed Beatrice. Even Beatrice was taken back to the control room by the lunar temple. Even Shiro didn't kill anyone. Do I look like someone who would kill innocent people? Rin Enbin smiled awkwardly as he complained in his mind. I don't know who said that he had already killed the other party once. Yes, I understand. Rin Enbin sighed and nodded. A moment later, Angelica's body began to glow, and she was obediently teleported to the lunar temple. Then with this, there will be no more restraints. Wuming stretched his arms and legs. The reason why everyone was teleported to the lunar temple was to prevent them from interfering with Wuming. Once again, Wuming didn't want to take over the power of others. Back then, Wuming planned to attack Darius' headquarters alone. After obtaining the power of a god, Wuming, who reached the root of his hometown, had the ability to do so. Well then, have you come out, Darius? After Wuming shouted. Darius's laughter came from the replacement space in the center of the big pit. Ha 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 ha, as expected of the legendary dragon, Lord Hyunryong, to be able to defeat all of my dolls. After saying that, Darius walked out of the hidden space and revealed himself. However, Darius was holding a little girl's hand. The black mud was produced from the little girl's body. Wuming couldn't help but frown. This girl was none other than the friend that Mayu had happily introduced to Wuming. Erica? Mayu exclaimed in surprise when she saw this scene through the screen that had yet to be turned off. No matter what, Erica was someone who wanted to befriend Mayu. Even if they had become enemies for some unknown reason, Mayu still couldn't help but worry about Erica. What's more, Erica's eyes were lifeless at the moment, like a doll's. That's what you want to say, Lord Hyunryong. Darius pretended to be elegant, although this still made Wuming nauseous. Wuming didn't say anything, but his piercing gaze still told Darius. However, Darius continued his disgusting elegant speech as if he didn't see Wuming's cold eyes. Given everything by everyone, a body made of God's clay, a magic box with disaster and hope since birth, this is her name. Pandora. Wuming said Erica's real name. Ever since Wuming saw Pandora in school, Wuming had already seen through, guessed Erica's true identity. She was wrapped in endless darkness, but at the core, there was a glimmer of light. Coupled with the faint aura of a god's generation, Wuming wasn't 100% sure at first, but after Darius' speech, Wuming was 100% sure. Erica Ainsworth's true identity was Pandora, the magic box that contained countless disasters created by the gods in the place of the gods, the sorceress that made people sigh with pity. Now I've finally opened Pandora's box. Ha 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 ha. It was as if Darius had realized his lifelong wish. He laughed with all his strength, and kept on laughing. Hearing this laughter and seeing this scene, Mayu, whose soul was trembling due to the influence of the black soil, became even more afraid. She took 2 shaky steps back. No. Erica, however, 2 hands pressed down on Mayu's back. The warmth from the palms caused Mayu's trembling body to stop. Mayu turned around and saw a pair of similar faces. Ilya. Little Black. Mayu said in a daze. Don't be afraid, Mayu. Ilya looked at Mayu with an unusually firm gaze. You still have us here. Little Black smiled mischievously. That's right. Rin and Osaka adjusted the glasses that he had put on at some point. Everyone is here, Mayu. Livia looked at Mayu with a gentle smile that wasn't arrogant. Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu smiled at Mayu. Although Bazette didn't smile and had a serious expression, Mayu saw encouragement in his calm gaze. Everyone. Seeing that everyone's souls were no longer trembling, Mayu was touched. Mayu-sama, please don't be discouraged. Sapphire flew into Mayu's hands at the right time. Sapphire, I understand. Mayu hugged Sapphire and nodded at everyone. Perfect. Perfect. Next, it's time to fight the Great Demon King. Ruby suddenly shouted in a high-pitched voice. Bam. Instantly, a fist sent Ruby flying. You bastard. Can't you just be quiet? Rin and Osaka maintained his punching posture, and said in a slightly annoyed tone. Protest. Violent protest. Ruby, who was fine, flew back and protested Rin Osaka beside Ilya. Looks like you're itching for a beating, Ruby. Hey. Rin and Osaka, you're finally acting like a lady. Can't you be more obedient? What did you say? I've always been a lady, okay. Seriously, why are you two fighting again? Sister 2, doesn't she know how to read the atmosphere? Mama, everyone stop fighting. Senpai, you're not dignified at all. That's why. I'm really unlucky to be betrayed by the higher-ups. I can't believe that I'm working with you guys now. Mayu smiled happily as she looked at the people who were playing around. While inadvertently paying attention to the big screen, Mayu saw that Wu Ming was looking at her gently without relaxing for a moment. Feeling her beloved brother's encouraging gaze, Mayu nodded again. Kala sat on the main control platform and reported to Wu Ming. Master, the spirit world barrier has been successfully strengthened. Everyone's souls are no longer affected by the black mud. Well done, Kalas. Yes, thank you for your praise. At this moment, Darius stopped laughing. Now I don't need the Holy Grail anymore. You and the Holy Grail will be destroyed together, Hyunryong. Chapter 301. After Darius finished speaking, Erica, or rather Pandora, whose eyes had lost consciousness, erupted with black mud all over her body. The black mud came menacingly and swallowed Darius in an instant. Ah! Ha ha ha! The black mud that engulfed Darius began to condense into a black sphere. Inside the black sphere, Darius's wanton laughter could be heard. Immediately after, the pitch-black sphere began to vibrate, as if something was rushing out from the inside. The entire black sphere began to deform irregularly from the outside. However, how can I give you a chance? Instantly, the two stone plates in Wu Ming's heart lit up. I will deny the sky, deny the earth. The storm will destroy everything, and the rain will cover everything. With this supreme divine power, I will make everything in the world bow and kneel. Lightning! 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 I am the conqueror who can defeat 1,000 with a white, 10,000 with 1,000, and 10,000 with 10,000. Now for me who is on the side of justice, please shine brightly and bestow me with divine power. Wu Ming chanted 2 words in a row, and a raging storm enhanced by violent thunder and lightning appeared in his hand. With a violent destructive force that could destroy everything, it spun and hit the black sphere. However, Darius, who was swallowed by the black mud, was not unable to move. Kaboom! Countless black mud whips formed into countless black mud whips and bombarded the oncoming thunderstorm with violent explosions. With the supreme primordial power, I will crush all enemies and enmity from humans and demons. This is my violent incarnation. In an instant, Wu Ming added the aura of the origin dragon to the thunderstorm. The black mud whips that were in a stalemate were instantly broken by the thunderstorm and bombarded the black sphere. The pitch-black sphere let out what sounded like a miserable shriek. However, Rin Dosaka and the others could not recognize this sound. They only felt that there was a sound. It should be said that they received the sound through their brains and not their ears. Everyone who heard this voice held their heads in pain. Wu Ming said to Kalas after noticing Rin Enbin's strange behavior. Kalas, cut off the call, set up the defensive barrier, and get away from here. Yes, master. Kalas immediately cut off the sound transmission on both sides of the screen. Following that, Kalas also set up a barrier in the Lunar Palace to prevent the voice from reaching everyone's minds. She then operated the Lunar Palace to leave this place. After they could no longer hear anything, their expressions gradually turned for the better. Will Wu Ming be alright by himself? The recovered Rin asked Kalas. The others also looked at Kalas with concern, waiting for her answer. Master's hypostasis is at the pinnacle of existence. His mind and soul won't be affected, Kalas replied. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. What about his body? Mayu suddenly said. Brother Wu Ming's current body is not his original body. It's just the body of a servant. Can the enemy affect Brother Wu Ming's body? Answer me, Kalas. Mayu looked at Kalas with some seriousness. When Mayu said this, everyone reacted. Yes, Wu Ming said that he was not dead, and his body was not here. His current body was just the body of a servant, which was a body made of magical power. Although this body was extremely powerful for ordinary people, for an enemy of that level, I'm afraid. Mayu just looked at Kelly and didn't move a single step. If it's the body, the enemy can indeed affect the master. After a moment of silence, Kalas answered Mayu's question. Then what is Brother Wu Ming's chance of winning? Mayu continued to ask. After all, Kalas is a magic dress, and the calculation of the winning rate can naturally be analyzed. However, Kalas did not speak again. According to the comparison of the current strength of Black Clay and Master Wu Ming, the result of the calculation is that the winning rate is only less than 5%. At this time, Sapphire, who had been serving Mayu, calculated the result. What? How can it be so low? Everyone was surprised. After all, it was Wu Ming who took the initiative to attack Ainsworth. As for the information, Wu Ming should have collected it. No matter how stupid Wu Ming was, he would not fight an unprepared war. Then isn't Big Brother in danger? Let's hurry and save him. Ilya said in a panic and then ran out. However, Blackie pulled Ilya back. What are you doing, little Black? Don't stop me. Ilya, calm down. Even if you go, you won't be able to do anything. The difference in strength is too great. Little Black shook his head and said calmly, "That's right, Ilya. Little Black is right. I don't have the confidence to defeat that sphere," Ruby said while floating beside Ilya. But, are we just going to watch Big Brother like this?" Ilya shook her head sadly. Everyone did not speak, and they all became silent. Sapphire's calculation of the winning rate is only for the previous master. The current master is no longer the same as before. At this time, Collis suddenly spoke. "What do you mean?" Livia took a step forward and looked at Collis. Actually, Master killed a god in another world and seized the god's power. As soon as Alice's words left her mouth, everyone was immediately stunned. But thinking about Wu Ming's identity, everyone was relieved. By the way, isn't Big Brother originally a god? Ilya, who did not understand anything, asked. Of course not, Ilya. Wu Ming appeared as a fantasy breed in Mesopotamia's mythology. Although he's a god in name, he's not the same as a god, Rin Inosaka said. Legend has it that Hyenryong is the son of the Mesopotamia's god of creation, Tiamat. He's the closest to Tiamat, and he's even the highest fantasy breed that surpasses Tiamat. In other words, Big Brother isn't a god, right? Little Black concluded. Actually, Master was born from the origin. What? Everyone was truly surprised by Alice's words. Unfortunately, Ilya still didn't understand. That. Ilya smiled embarrassedly and looked at everyone. The origin is the origin of all things, the cause and effect of all things, the origin of all things, the ultimate truth. Rin Inosaka's explanation left Ilya dumbfounded. Simply put, without the origin, there would be no world, and there would be no us, Little Black said simply. I see. But if that's the case, aren't we also born from the origin? Ilya was confused again. We're different. Although there would be no us without the origin, we weren't born from the origin. You can understand that we're the infinite differentiation of things born from the origin, and we're finally formed, Livia explained. Wu Ming, on the other hand, was born directly from the origin. His status is comparable to the two great restraints. That. What's restraints? Ilya was embarrassed. She really did not know anything. Forget it. Next time, I'll give you a good all-around lesson. Rin Inosaka sighed and then shook his head helplessly. Actually, Master wasn't born from the origin of this world. Instead, he was born from a place of a higher status. A higher status? Everyone was confused. I feel so embarrassed. All right then, even Ilya wanted to cry. Even the others didn't know about this, so there was no way she would know about it. Chapter 302. Did you know that there are other worlds outside this world? Collis said in detail. It seems that you're not talking about parallel worlds. Rin Inosaka touched his chin and said thoughtfully. When Rin Inosaka said that, the others frowned thoughtfully. That was what people often did when they were thinking. What do you mean? Well, this time it was Ilya again. Ilya had already closed her eyes in fright. Ilya basically didn't understand what everyone was saying. Now, Ilya felt that she had lost her face to the limit. Everything in the world is born from the root, and naturally, there can be more than one world. And where do these different worlds come from? It's the place called the Great Root. The Great Root? Everyone repeated Collis's words and thought carefully. Master is the existence born from the Great Root, the legendary dragon, the Root Dragon. Doesn't that mean that Wu Ming's level is higher than the suppression power? Rin Inosaka exclaimed. In short, that's right. After Collis said that, everyone became nervous again. But Collis paused for a moment after finishing her sentence. Master, as the Root Dragon, is not yet an adult, and because of some accident, Master did not absorb power from the Great Root after he was born, but was forced to leave the Great Root. Therefore, Master is not that powerful. Since Collis became Wu Ming's noble phantasm, she became the owner of Wu Ming's existence, and she knew about Wu Ming's origin and life. Although most of it was from Wu Ming and Collis when they were chatting. Wu Ming told Collis that it was not a secret, and although it was not necessary to be too secretive, it was better not to tell others. For Rin Inosaka and the others, Collis judged that they were already regarded as trustworthy partners, so she told them those things. Everyone also understood that Collis trusted them by telling them such a mysterious secret. Naturally, they would not do anything to leak it. After a long period of silence, Wuxia suddenly spoke. The accident you mentioned, could it be related to the black mud? Wuxia is right. That's very possible. In comparison, Wuming is a little too obsessed with the black mud, Ren Enbin agreed. Everyone, including Meiyu, couldn't help but ponder. Everyone, including Meiyu, had an expression that said, "It seems to be true." After all, no matter how one looked at it, Wuming was too obsessed with the black mud. Whether it was Wuming's understanding of the black mud or his expression when he talked about it as if he was facing a great enemy, it all showed how much he cared about the black mud. Although there were 2 reasons to eliminate Ainsworth to prevent them from being a threat to Meiyu, and Wuming himself saying that how could he not return the favor after being beaten up? However, Wuming gave everyone the feeling that he was extremely obsessed with the black mud. Rin, if you think about it carefully, Big Brother is really too obsessed with the black mud. Little Black frowned. Everyone looked at Collis. However, Collis didn't intend to explain. Regarding this point, let's wait for Master to return victorious and let Master tell you personally. Then Collis fell into silence. Look, Ilya pointed at the screen that was still open and exclaimed in surprise. Everyone looked at the screen. On the screen, the black ball that was hit by Wuming's thunderstorm had turned into a headless giant. No, it was not headless. The head of the giant was Darius, but because it was too small, it was unclear. The scene shifted to the scene. Wuming looked at the black mud amalgamation that did not disappear after receiving Wuming's full force attack, and turned into a giant. It turns out that all the disasters inside Pandora's box have been transformed into this black mud. Wuming clearly recognized that the black mud was the mud-like substance that Wuming saw inside the big root. Those mud-like substances seemed solid, but in fact they were some gas. A large amount of black mist condensed into a mud-like black mist amalgamation. And now, the black mud giant in front of him was a new substance born from the combination of the black mist and the disaster substance in Pandora's box. It looked like some sticky black mud, but that black mud had the power of the root. The root was the origin of all things, and naturally, it was also the origin of bad things, and naturally, it also had bad power. However, that was not correct. There was no good or bad power, only the person who used the power could distinguish the good from the bad. For example, if Wuming was a heinous criminal, then Wuming's power was the source of evil. However, Wuming, who chose to stand on the good side, had the power of light. It could only be said that the black mud was just a new substance produced by the fusion of countless disasters in Pandora's box and the unknown black mist with the power of the root. How is it, Hyunryong? This is the eternal. This is the root. Darius, who was at the top of the black mud giant, laughed crazily again. But soon, Darius stopped, as if he had changed from a neurotic to a sage. Oh right, I almost forgot. You were also born from there. How could you not know? I'm sorry, Root Dragon. Saying so, Darius smiled warmly. However, Wuming's eyes shrank sharply when he heard that sentence. But soon, Wuming was relieved. So that's how it is. Did the black mud tell you? Wuming immediately guessed how Darius knew his identity. The black mud had the power of the root. The black mud and Darius merged together, and the two resonated like symbiotic entities. The black mud knew Wuming's identity, although it did not have any self-consciousness. At least, that was what Wuming saw at the moment. In this way, Darius, who had merged with the black mud, naturally knew Wuming's identity. However, this made Wuming begin to doubt whether these natural enemies of Wuming had self-consciousness. Not here. It did not mean that there were none in other worlds. At least, Wuming did not think that these actions, which came from the same root as Wuming, could not travel between worlds. It would be terrible if some people with high authority were to combine with the black mud. Don't worry, Lord Root Dragon. These black mud do not have self-consciousness, Darius suddenly said. Wuming frowned. Did Darius see through his thoughts? I saw your identity by accident when I was fusing with them. No one told me about it. On the surface, Wuming still had a frown on his face, but in fact, he was relieved in his heart. Although my wish has almost been fulfilled, Lord Root Dragon, I am a little interested in your birthplace, the Big Root. Wu Ming's frown became more obvious, and Darius became more abnormal. I don't know why, but I'm eager to return to home now, Root Dragon. Be devoured by me, and return to the Big Root with me. Chapter 303. After swearing his oath, Darius began his so-called devouring of Wu Ming. One after another, tentacle-like mud whips stretched out from the black mud all over the big holes, constantly attacking Wu Ming. Swish, swish, swish. Wu Ming dodged the tentacles that stretched out from the black mud on the ground one after another, and looked at Darius, who had become neither human nor ghost. At this moment, Darius' lower body was in the headless mud giant's body, and his upper body was still wearing a thin black shirt. However, the skin on his exposed arms had begun to turn dark. The black substance covered Darius's body, forming a pattern that looked uncomfortable. Darius looked at Wu Ming with his black-red eyes. Okay, Dragon of Origin, don't resist anymore. Quickly become one with me. After dodging a few more black mud whips, Wu Ming shook his head as he looked at Darius. It's hopeless, his soul has been completely eroded. Since many years ago, Darius had been using substitution magic to transfer his personality and soul to the next generation of his descendants. Since then, Darius's soul had become broken. So far, although Darius himself said that he had become eternal, Wu Ming, who was no stranger to this black mud, could easily see that Darius' soul had been completely eroded. It was completely eroded by the fusion of disaster and the black fog in Pandora's box. In that case, I don't need to show mercy, Wu Ming said indifferently. Ha. Ha 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 ha, show mercy. Are you kidding? Dragon of Origin. Darius began to laugh when he heard Wu Ming's words. If you're talking about the power of origin that restrains each other, then don't bother. With this Pandora's box in hand, these tools can be said to be endless. Do you understand? Darius's tone was abnormal. Moreover, like a French marshal, Darius's eyes began to bulge. I don't need to use up all of your black mud. Just capture the leader first. Wu Ming's golden eyes slowly lit up as he stared at Darius as if he was looking at a dead object. This gaze made Darius a little afraid. What a joke! Didn't you say you couldn't use your noble artifact? If you can summon your true body, then I might be a little afraid. But you can't summon your true body. You can't fight me at all. Darius almost roared to hide his fear. After dodging a few more black mud whips, Wu Ming closed his eyes. After this, Wu Ming was entangled by the black mud whips. It seems that you know that I have returned to my origin. Indeed, my true body can no longer be summoned by a mere servant, and other noble artifacts won't be of much use to you. To put it simply, this caster magician profession won't work on you. But, after that, Wu Ming's closed eyes suddenly opened, and Wu Ming's body exuded a golden holy light. At the same time, the huge dragon body that was sleeping inside the root suddenly emitted a special light from the dragon horn. It was also at this moment that some of the black mist inside the root rushed toward the light. In front of the dragon body, a space-time portal was opened, and the light broke the seal of the black mist and entered the space-time portal. Then the space-time portal disappeared. The black mist that didn't succeed in organizing went crazy and began to wreak havoc on the huge dragon body. However, countless holy light and thunder burst out in an instant, vaporizing the black mud. The scene changed, and above Wu Ming, who was entangled, a space-time portal suddenly opened, and a huge golden beam of light descended in an instant, enveloping Wu Ming. The beam of light vaporized the black mud whips that entangled Wu Ming in an instant. I didn't say that my true body can't interfere with this servant's spiritual base. Like a god descending, Wu Ming's entire body was shrouded in the golden beam of light. His white clothes fluttered in the wind, and his golden hair fluttered wantonly. His two bright golden eyes shone even brighter. This is? Go to hell, go to hell, go to hell, go to hell. Darius was stunned at first, then roared wildly, driving the headless mud giant toward Wu Ming. And the black mud in the big pit quickly gathered in the direction of Wu Ming. The black mud hit the golden beam of light like waves, but the golden beam of light was like a stubborn stone on the coast, It couldn't be destroyed. Instead, the black mud that came into contact with the golden beam of light began to burn, emitting light smoke. An existence that specifically targets the malignant tumor of your world, servant, savior, descends here. Wu Ming, who was inside the beam of light, declared. When the beam of light disappeared, Wu Ming's outfit changed. The original short golden hair turned into short black hair, and the golden pupils turned into red pupils. However, the pure white clothes didn't change much, but there was a layer of golden lines on the white robe. The golden lines emitted light, illuminating the earth, looking extremely mysterious. Wu Ming's current appearance can be said to be exactly the same as his true body in human form. Then, the black mud that was illuminated by the golden light began to emit green smoke, like a necrotic creature, shrinking and disappearing. This power, could it be? Darius couldn't believe it. That's right, Darius. This power is the origin power. Wu Ming raised a hand, and a ball of golden particles attached to it. Do you think you can win like this? Don't forget, I have the origin power too. As he said that, Darius also raised his hand like Wu Ming. Black particles materialized and attached to it. Wu Ming naturally understood what Darius meant. The origin power did not have a fixed form. The two's powers were different only because Darius's origin power was attached to the black mud, while Wu Ming's origin power was a natural ability obtained by Wu Ming, who was in the origin power. They were powers of the same origin, but they were also powers that countered each other. This was also the reason why Darius did not retreat even though he panicked. But, Darius, do you think I changed my spiritual base just for the origin power? Wu Ming smiled. Wu Ming used his true body in the Great Origin not just to change Caster's spiritual base into Savior's spiritual base. Haven't you noticed that the world is rejecting you now? Chapter 304. After Wu Ming said this, Darius also felt it. He now felt that the whole world was rejecting him. Just like material evolution, the earth, the sky, the flowers, the air, everything became harmful to Darius. It was not that it became something else, but it became an additional attribute, Darius poison. Just like how humans could not adapt to the air on Mars, Darius gradually began to be unable to adapt to the environment on Earth. What's going on? Darius felt his body begin to decay, and immediately began to wrap his body with the power of the source. It could only be said that the power of the source was somewhat of a cheat. Almost everything was restrained by it. After all, it was the origin of everything. And only the power of the source could restrain the power of the source. It's actually very simple. I just added an ability to my spiritual base. Wu Ming kindly explained to Darius. Nemesis of evil Yex, Savior is righteous. Once identified by the Savior as evil, and their actions have an impact on the world, they will be counterattacked by the power of the world of the same level. The degree of the counterattack is enough to kill and cause fatal effects. You are the guy who absorbed all the disasters in Pandora's box. As an existence that brings disaster to the world will give you the same punishment. Wu Ming smiled. Don't be surprised. For me, who is in the source, changing the rank of a mere clone servant is not difficult. Moreover, with my identity, even if I tell Gaia and Alea, I can change my rank at will. Just think of it as me cheating to save effort, the disaster of the world. Wu Ming's series of words stunned Darius. Then Darius began to laugh. Ha 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 ha. Covering his black and red eyes, Darius laughed wildly. Then, as long as I devour your clone, I will leave this world. That's it. Darius stared at Wu Ming as if he was looking at a delicacy. Then I will go to the source and devour your body. That way, I will be a god. A true god. However, Wu Ming scoffed at Darius's words. If not for the fact that his main body still needed to draw power from the root, it would not have been difficult for Silent's main body to find the black mud that had fused with the black mist in Pandora's box, even if he could not easily find it. Moreover, if Darius really did go to the root, then he would definitely die without leaving a trace. With the origin dragon and the great origin, how could a mere world's calamity cause any trouble? Then I'll let you die in peace, Darius. After saying that, Wuming began to chant the spirit words. All evildoers, be afraid of my power. Now, I will obtain the majesty of 10 mountains, the strength of 100 rivers, and the strength of 1,000 dragons. What the majestic me raises is the ferocious dragon mark. Instantly, Wuming's body emitted a bright light. Die. At that moment, Darius' attack arrived. A huge black mud palm instantly grabbed Wuming. Countless black mud that contained origin power surged toward Wuming from the black mud giant's arm that grabbed Wuming. But, Wuming struggled to break the hand that grabbed him. Don't underestimate the power of the dragon seed. Dragons, no matter which country it was, or which myth it was, were all powerful existences. As the origin dragon, Wuming's main body was naturally powerful. Compared to being a spellcaster, Wuming was more suited to be a warrior. This was a God-given ability bestowed by Wuming's main body. A powerful body and a powerful spiritual base brought about unparalleled power. As for the dragon seed incarnation, it was purely to enhance Wuming's physical attributes. Whether it was strength, speed, durability, magic power, spirit power, resistance, etc., all of his attributes were increased. Coupled with the boundless origin power in his body, Wuming's contact with the black mud was as easy as cutting through paper with a sharp blade. I am the strongest and the one who holds all victory in my hands. No matter if it's a human or a demon. I am the one who defeats all enemies' hostility. I will defeat any enemy that stands in my way. As the words were uttered, a golden dragon-shaped giant that was the same size as the black mud giant appeared. Bang bang! The golden dragon-shaped giant threw 2 punches. The black mud giant was unable to defend against these mutually reinforcing attacks. The black mud giant's body was instantly shattered. It's not over yet. I won't lose. Darius roared, and the black mud giant that had been scattered instantly recovered. Immediately after, the black mud giant hugged the golden dragon-shaped giant. Countless black mud rushed toward the golden dragon-shaped giant. After all, the dragon-shaped giant was instantly dissolved. Wuming came out of the golden dragon-shaped giant's body before the black mud covered the golden dragon-shaped giant. Wuming looked at the disappearing golden dragon-shaped giant in the air and felt a little helpless. That's why this kind of mutual restraint is really a headache. It wasn't that Silent Wonder couldn't win. Rather, it was as if the two of them were mutually damaging each other. Both of them had attributes that countered each other. Silent Wonder, who had many trump cards, would only find it slightly more difficult to win. Soon Wuming's expression turned into a smile. However, this is also the reason why I'm changing my class. That's right. In order to avoid trouble, Wuming used the world's power, and used Bane of Evil Yex to constantly destroy Darius's black mud giant body. Boom. The black mud giant was about to fall apart, and Darius's face was also ugly. While maintaining the world's resistance, he also had to fight against the power that restrained him. It was inevitable for Darius, who had just fused with the black mud giant, to struggle. As if he had guessed his fate, Darius roared in despair. Why? I've spent 1,000 years. Finally, I opened Pandora's box, and I gained supreme power. I gained immortality. Why did you appear? Looking at Darius like this, Wuming chuckled. Without me, your plan wouldn't have succeeded. Let's not talk about Gaia. Even Alea would have stopped you. Without Wuming, Zelik wouldn't have saved the world. Regardless of what happened to the earth, human beings were doomed to destruction, and Alea, as a human consciousness, must eliminate the scourge that led to the destruction of human beings. In addition, there was another reason why Darius was doomed to fail. For victory, come to me quickly. Immortal son, please give me a shining steed. Horses with enough intelligence. Bring me the light wheel that symbolizes your master. Fear the one with wings. Evil people and powerful people are all afraid of me with wings. My wings will bring you a curse. Evil people won't be able to hit me. Wuming condensed a sun in his palm and slammed the small condensed sun into the black mud giant's chest at lightning speed. Boom. Instantly, the black clay giant's chest exploded. What was revealed wasn't a hole, but Erica or Pandora. At this moment, Pandora was wearing a thin black dress, with long hair like a noble lady, Her eyes were closed, and her hands were hugging her legs. But strangely, Pandora's body was constantly emitting light, which was the hope that restrained all the disasters in Pandora's box. Now do you understand, Darius? The Pandora's box that released all the disasters is only left with hope, the hope to save humanity. Chapter 305. As if responding to Wu Ming's words, Pandora responded to my body and emitted some strange light. The light wrapped around the black mud giant, and the black mud giant made a sound. How is this possible? A mere box is actually my nemesis. I have been planning this for 1,000 years. 1,000 years. I can't accept this. I can't accept this. Darius roared madly, like the last roar of a trapped beast before its death. It was so miserable that it made people sympathize with him. Being suppressed by the world, his body was basically composed of the disaster in Pandora's box, suppressed by the hope in Pandora's box. At present, the only thing that could work was Wu Ming's source power. Why do you think Pandora's box appeared? Crisis and hope coexist. Now take this despair back to the source. For victory, come to me. Immortal son, please give me a shining steed. O spirited horse, with the lifeline of my origin dragon, I bestow upon the eternal glory. Bring me the wheel of light that symbolizes me. On the stone plate in Wu Ming's heart, two simple pointers pointed to the stone plate with the sun. With the stone plate emitting a red light, the immortal sun attached to Wu Ming's body. The sun incarnation not only had the ability to summon the sun, but also the ability to turn Wu Ming himself into the sun. Wu Ming used the sun incarnation attached to his body, ignited an endless golden sun flame, and burned the black mud giant. Darius may have made a mournful scream, but Wu Ming's ears were filled with the sound of burning flames, and there was no room for other sounds. Accompanied by the burning flames, countless rays of the sun blocked everything. And by the way, it set off a solar storm. The solar storm blew the Showa Moon Temple in the distance, but soon, the Showa Moon Temple stabilized. All the people in the Showa Moon Temple were in disarray. Rin stood up, patted her skirt, and looked at everyone. Is everyone all right? Ilya rubbed her head in a daze and looked at Mayu, who was supporting her, as well as Blackie, who was being supported by Sakura Madu. She smiled embarrassedly. He's fine probably. Seriously, what on earth did Wu Ming do? Livia grumbled. Making a lady fall was not something a gentleman would do, let alone Wu Ming. Look at the screen. Bazette pointed at the screen that was originally used to communicate with Wu Ming. At this moment, the screen had turned white. The people in the lunar temple looked at the screen that had turned white, and felt the violent tremors just now. They fell into deep shock. Then, the virtual screen dimmed like a TV that had its power cut off. This should be Big Brother's magic power messing up the screen's magic power reception. I'm afraid that Big Brother's surroundings have become unsuitable for modern people to live in a magic power environment. No matter what, Shiro Amiya was someone who had received special training in the clock tower. He was able to analyze this phenomenon. At this moment, Ilya spoke carefully. Big Brother 1. Ilya was not the only one. Almost everyone present was paying attention to Wu Ming's situation. Although everyone believed in Wu Ming's strength very much, at this moment where the outcome could not be determined, everyone's mood was still very uneasy. This was especially so for Mayu. At this moment, Mayu's expression had turned very pale due to worry. Master has won. There's no doubt about it. Colos's cold voice sounded. It was unusually simple and clear. However, everyone felt that this voice was filled with joy. Colos's words caused everyone to sigh in relief. Mayu's helpless expression turned warm. Then can't we immediately go to Big Brother's side? Ilya asked. After all, Shiro Amiya had already said that Wu Ming's surroundings might have become unsuitable for modern people to live in. The lunar temple can adapt to almost any environment. As long as you don't go out, you won't be affected, Colos explained. Then, everyone looked at each other and nodded. Then, as the captain of the lunar temple, I'll go to the big crater at full speed in the name of the lunar temple. Rin Enbin said in a pretentious manner. Surprisingly, Livia did not refute Rin Enbin this time. Well, I'll let you be in the limelight. In the corner, Beatrice hugged her legs in fear. Her face was buried between her legs as she sat on the ground, because the impact of the solar storm just now happened to wake Beatrice up. It seemed that because she did not have a rank card, Beatrice appeared to be quite weak at the moment. Angelica stood where she was as obedient as ever. Even the solar storm just now had not been able to make this puppet, who had mastered displacement magic, lose her composure. Angelica looked at the excitement and joy on everyone's faces. She couldn't wait to meet Wuming and closed her eyes. So boring, Angelica said softly. However, this sentence was full of envy. In the big crater, the light that almost covered the entire Winterwood city dissipated, revealing a scene that looked like it had been scorched by the sun. Yes, there was no magma everywhere, nor was there a piece of the earth dug out. It was just the scene of the earth being scorched by the sun for a long time. The only difference was that the originally pitch-black mud had completely disappeared. Wuming stood in the big crater with a person in his arms, and another person lying next to him. Erica, who was in Wuming's arms, seemed to have fallen asleep. She lay in Wuming's arms peacefully. Her little head moved unconsciously, and vague sounds came from her mouth. Erica, or rather, Pandora, because the countless disasters in Pandora's box had left the box and merged with Darius. Therefore, Pandora could be said to be completely harmless. Because there was no need to kill her, Wuming saved her. After all, she was a great hero who helped Wuming defeat Darius. As for the person lying next to Wuming, if Shiro Amiya was here he would be very shocked. The person lying next to Wuming was Julian Ainsworth. Logically speaking, it was impossible for Julian, who had been completely replaced by Darius, to reappear. However, because his soul had fused with the black mud, Darius had left Julian's body. Julian, who was originally unconscious in the black mud, was discovered when Wuming defeated Darius. Thinking that it was easy, Wuming saved Julian. As for why Erica was in his arms, and Julian was lying down, Wuming expressed that Julian was a big man, and it was not as comfortable as Erica, who was a little girl. This is. Julian opened his eyes slowly. Because the sun was too bright, Julian subconsciously used his hand to block the sunlight. You're awake. Wuming's voice came from the side. Hearing Wuming's voice, Julian's pupils shrank. Chapter 306. Julian's eyes were a little shocked, but he soon recovered. Darius was defeated. Julian said calmly. From his voice, Wuming could feel a trace of hope. Yes, including the soul. He was completely defeated. Wuming turned his head to look in the direction of the sun, and said with a smile, the suppression of the world, the hope in Pandora's box, and Wuming's source power combined these three forces. Darius's wish was completely shattered. Darius and the black mud were all burned clean by Wuming's sun. Why did you save me? Suddenly Julian asked. I didn't want to save you. You saved yourself, Wuming retorted. If it were someone else, even if I killed Darius, his original personality would not reappear. Although Darius said that you have been completely replaced by him, from the looks of it, you should have resisted Darius's replacement magic with your strong spirit. Wuming turned his head to look at Julian. Julian was silent, which meant that he acquiesced. I've done a little research on the Ainsworth family's replacement magic. It's already shocking for an average person to be able to hold on for more than 10 days without being completely replaced. You actually managed to hold on for years with your own willpower. It's really rare. Because Darius set the replacement magic on his descendants, Darius would start to replace the personality of a random person in each generation, every time after a certain period of time, making himself immortal in a sense. Because this was a curse engraved in the soul, many descendants of Ainsworth had no way to come into contact with it. It must be said that Darius's replacement magic was really powerful. Each replacement only took a few days, and the replaced personality would become Darius, who retained his previous memories. Julian, who could continue to not be replaced, could be said to have extremely strong willpower. You can now live without any direction. Darius will no longer switch to your body. Now Darius, whose soul and personality had fused with the black mud, was mentally destroyed by Wuming. Even if the curse was still engraved in Aria's soul, the curse would break on its own without the crucial replacement. After Wu Ming finished speaking, Julian fell silent. Thank you, Henryong. Then, Julian thanked Wu Ming in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. So, is there anything you want to do as the head of the Ainsworth family that is free from Darius' control? Wu Ming suddenly said. You have been hostile to Erica from the beginning. Although I don't know why you are so against Erica, for the sake of the future, please tell me the reason, Wu Ming said in a tone that brooked no refusal, and then looked at Julian coldly. Julian glared back at Wu Ming, not to be outdone. It had to be said that Julian was indeed a ruthless person who could resist Darius without being replaced. This is the cause of all the disasters of the Ainsworth family. Keeping her is also a disaster, Julian said with an unhappy expression. But no matter what, she is still your sister, isn't she? Wu Ming did not believe that Julian would not have any sibling feelings for Erica. At this point, Julian fell silent. Wu Ming chuckled when he saw this, then said, You don't have to worry about Pandora's box. Darius and the calamities in Pandora's box have all been wiped out by me. Even the hope left in Pandora's box has been exhausted in the final battle just now. Right now, Pandora's box is already empty. Wu Ming looked at Erica in his arms after saying that. The gods that have disappeared can no longer place disasters and hope in it. You should take up the responsibility of an older brother. With that, Wu Ming waited for Julian's reply. After hearing Wu Ming's words, Julian looked at Erica in Wu Ming's arms and fell into deep thought. However, no matter what, Julian was not a bad person. Otherwise, Shiro Amiya would not have become friends with him. Soon Julian figured it out. I understand, Henryong. Julian nodded at Wu Ming. Then, he took the sleeping Erica from Wu Ming's arms. Wu Ming was not worried that Julian would lie to him. A person like Julian would not stoop to lying to Wu Ming in order to kill Erica. This was a matter of principle. Julian carried Erica and walked out of the crater. After taking a few steps, Julian turned his head and looked at Wu Ming. I will contact the clock tower to explain. By the way, I will be responsible for repairing this crater. Leave the clock tower to me. You can be an ordinary high school student. Wu Ming waved his hand. Then Wu Ming laughed mischievously. By the way, you have been absent from school for a long time for no reason. Do you need me to contact the school for you? I have some power in Winterwood City. As soon as Wu Ming said that, Julian's face darkened. He turned and left. Just like that, Wu Ming watched as Julian left the crater and entered the forest at the edge of the crater. At this moment, a virtual screen suddenly appeared beside Wu Ming. Great, Wu Ming, I finally got in touch with you. Rin Enbin on the other side of the screen heaved a sigh of relief. Because they had managed to contact Wu Ming, the three little Lolas were a little excited. They made a fuss on the other side of the screen, causing the screen to be a little abnormal. After hearing Rin Enbin's words, Wu Ming realized the problem. Because of the sudden increase in the concentration of mana around the crater and the distance between them, the lunar temple's signal could not reach Wu Ming for a while. When the lunar temple arrived near the crater, they finally managed to contact Wu Ming. As for Wu Ming's position in the crater, the concentration of mana was normal. This was because Erica and Julian were here. Wu Ming pushed the high-purity mana in the crater out of the crater. Otherwise, Julian would not have been able to talk to Wu Ming so calmly. *T. Wu Ming instantly realized that Julian would be eroded by the high-density mana after leaving the crater. Well, think about it. Julian was still fine after being replaced for so long. A little high-density mana shouldn't be a threat to him, probably. Wu Ming smiled awkwardly as he thought to himself. Speaking of which, where's that black mud guy? Wu Ming, did you destroy him? After adjusting the screen, Rin Enbin's face reappeared on the screen. Don't worry. The enemy is completely destroyed. There's no more danger. Wu Ming smiled. Big brother. Suddenly Little Black's voice came from afar. Wu Ming turned around and saw Little Black, Ilya, and Mayu running toward him in their transformed forms. They were clamoring to see you, so I teleported them down. Rin Enbin smiled awkwardly. Really? Wu Ming shook his head helplessly. When Mayu and the others were teleported down, It must have happened when the screen was abnormal. Fortunately, Rin Enbin teleported inside the crater and not outside. Otherwise, it would have been dangerous. You sent them down so hastily. Aren't you afraid that the enemy isn't dead yet? Ahahaha. You're here. Rin Enbin also realized this problem and smiled awkwardly. Ignoring Rin Enbin, Wuming turned around and looked at Meiyu and the others running toward them. Big brother! Brother Wuming! Ilya and Meiyu also shouted one after another. Wuming smiled as he squatted down and opened his arms. When they were about to reach Wuming, Meiyu suddenly sped up and instantly overtook Little Black and Ilya. She ran to the front and jumped into Wuming's arms. Ah! Meiyu, how can you do this? Meiyu cheated. Little Black and Ilya pouted as they looked at Meiyu and Wuming's arms. However, the two of them only complained and did not do anything else. Brother Wuming. Thank you. Thank you. Meiyu shed tears of joy as she leaned into Wuming's arms. Silly. You're my sister. You don't have to thank me. Wuming smiled gently as he placed his chin on Meiyu's head and comforted Meiyu. Brother Wuming. I like you the most. The sun shone on the siblings, and Little Black and Ilya saw a beautiful scene. They couldn't recover from their days for a long time. Chapter 307. Wuming didn't let Rin and Osaka land the lunar temple. Instead, he let Rin and Osaka drive the lunar temple back to the lunar mansion. After expelling all the high-density mana, Wuming brought Meiyu, Ilya, and Blackie back to the lunar mansion. At this time, Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu were already in the kitchen preparing a celebratory feast. Rin and Osaka and Livia, on the other hand, looked like they couldn't take it anymore. They were lying on the table, unable to get up. Don't think that the magic workshop of the gods was easy to operate. Without enough life force, there was no way to operate it. Fortunately, the two of them looked like they just ran a marathon and were completely exhausted. By the way, if it wasn't for the large amount of mana that Wuming injected into the lunar temple and the help of Kalis, Rin and Osaka and Livia would have been bedridden for 10 days if they were lucky. If they were lucky, they might have died. After all, the bodies of modern people and kamikaze people were different. Kamikaze people who could adapt to the high-density mana air were much stronger than modern people. Because he didn't want other people to participate, Wuming originally planned to let one of his clones control the lunar temple. Because of this, the lunar temple was designed according to Wuming himself. It was already a big surprise that modern people like Rin and Osaka and Livia could control it. I feel like we've been tricked by you, Wuming, Livia said weakly. I feel the same. Rin and Osaka weakly said 2 words and then stopped moving. You two insisted on coming. If I don't give you some work to do, it would be rude of me. Wuming smiled as he replied to Rin and Osaka and Livia. However, no matter how you looked at it, Wuming's smile contained a sense of evil. Well, that's good. You two just lie there, and don't cause any trouble. Blackie crossed his arms and looked at Rin and Osaka and Livia with a gloating expression. Damn it. Wait for me to get up, see if I. Then the two of them didn't even have the strength to say anything. Sister Rin and Sister Livia, are they really okay? As expected of Ilya, she was still worried about the two of them. Don't worry, I've injected them with life-sustaining medicine when they weren't paying attention. Kalis suddenly appeared in front of everyone. While speaking, Kelly used her dragon horn as her hand and shook the syringe that had no trace of medicine left. Ahaha. Ilya laughed helplessly. Magic costumes like stabbing people with syringes. Putting away the syringe, Kelly floated to the front of Wu Ming and said softly in a voice different from the cold voice she used to talk to others. Master, I'm back. Wu Ming didn't know where Kalis got such information from. After Kalis finished speaking, Wu Ming was stunned. But Wu Ming reacted instantly. He extended his hand. Welcome back, Kalis. Also, you've worked hard. Kalis flew to his hand. Wu Ming put Kalis on his head. Although Kalis didn't say anything, Wu Ming had a feeling that Kalis was happy. I'm going to cook. Since the two of you are like this, you won't be able to eat my cooking. What a pity. Otherwise, I won't cook. As soon as Wu Ming said this, Rin Enbin and Livia seemed to have regained their senses before death as they abruptly climbed up. Wait! No matter what, we're the ones who contributed. It's not too much to ask for a meal in return. After all, it's the result of your hard work. You should at least try it. Rin and Osaka and Livia spoke rather elegantly. They didn't look like they were half dead from lying on the table a moment ago. Mayu Lil Hei and Ilya smiled awkwardly. By the way, I'm also looking forward to Big Brother's cooking, Ilya smiled sweetly. Aha, I agree, Lil Hei said. Brother Wuming. Mayu looked at Wuming with anticipation. Yes, I'll cook when I get back. You guys look forward to it. Bazette, take care of them, Wuming said to Bazette, who was sitting on the sofa. Bazette looked like the sky was falling. To be honest, she wasn't good at dealing with children. But in order to pay for her trip home, Bazette nodded. Yes. Then Wuming looked at Angelica and Beatrice, who hadn't said anything. You two come with me, Wuming said calmly. Then he walked out of the room. Angelica followed them obediently, but Beatrice looked scared. Beatrice had no choice but to follow him, leaving behind the dumbfounded Mayu, Ilya, Lil Hei, and Rin Enbin and Livia, who were half dead again. When they came to the courtyard, Wuming stopped and turned to look at the two. I'm not a bad person. You don't have to be so scared. Wuming looked at the scared Beatrice and said, Yes. Beatrice replied stutteringly. After a pause, Wuming said, I want to tell you two things. The first thing is that Darius is dead. As soon as he finished, Angelica and Beatrice's eyes suddenly shrank. Obviously, they couldn't believe this sentence. Looking at the two's disbelieving eyes, Wuming continued. Don't doubt it. I've already wiped him out completely. In other words, you're all free now. Angelica and Beatrice came back to their senses and believed this conclusion for the time being. Then, did Master Julian also? Beatrice asked softly. This is the second thing I want to say. I saved Julian. After Wuming finished speaking, he began to observe the expressions of the two. Beatrice had a great expression. From her eyes, Wuming could see that Beatrice had special feelings for Julian. Angelica, on the other hand, still looked indifferent. Then what I want to ask is, do you want to return to Julian, the current head of Ainsworth? Or do you want to leave Ainsworth and start a new life? Or do you want to leave this body of a puppet? Although both of them were puppets and dead people, Wuming didn't feel that they couldn't live a new life as puppets. Playing with souls was something that Wuming was ashamed of, but for people who had returned to the ground and weren't unforgivable, Wuming would still let them choose their own future. Life or death, it was up to them. Chapter 308. I want to go back to Julian-sama, Beatrice said eagerly. Wuming thought it was quite rare. It seemed to be the first time Beatrice dared to speak loudly to Wuming. Wuming nodded. Of course, I can help you contact Julian. Or you can find him yourself. But Julian is definitely not in Ainsworth Castle in Winterwood City. Even if you want to find him, you may not be able to find him. I advise you to stay here first. Wuming checked Ainsworth Castle. Because of Darius' death, the whole castle turned into rocks. It turned out that Ainsworth Castle was the result of Darius using displacement magic to replace the rocky mountain. As soon as Darius died, Ainsworth Castle naturally changed back to its original appearance. As Wuming said, Julian would not go back there. Moreover, although Beatrice could leave alone, Beatrice may not be able to find Julian. After all, Beatrice no longer had a class card, and she could not protect herself in the face of danger. As a result, Wuming felt a little guilty for letting a little girl wander around. Wuming would not return the class card to Beatrice. Not to mention that Beatrice had used the class card for a long time. Her spirit and personality were somewhat abnormal. If he returned the class card to Beatrice, it was hard to guarantee that Beatrice would not hurt people. Therefore, Wuming suggested that Beatrice stay in Shoyu's house for the time being, waiting for Wuming's help to find Julian. Wuming already knew the real name of the Berserker class card used by Beatrice. It was Magin, the eldest son of Thor in Norse mythology, the god of strength in Norse mythology. The giant hammer Beatrice used when she used Dream Summon, install, was indeed Mjolnir, the weapon of Thor, the strongest god in Northern Europe. In Norse mythology, after Thor and Jormungandr died together, Thor's Mjolnir and Thor's divine title were inherited by Thor's eldest son, Mani, and second son, Modi. Through this point, Berserker Mani's card had all of Thor's divinity and the right to use Mjolnir. The reason why Beatrice did not die after being hit by Shiro Amiya was because of her inherent skill, Dusk Survivor. When she was judged to be dead, Thor's divine core would replace her, but at the same time, she lost the right to use Mjolnir and became the god of strength. If it was just Mani the Hercules, she had no special skills. Well, okay then, Beatrice said weakly. What about you, Angelica? What is your choice? Wuming looked at Angelica and asked directly. I'm an abandoned puppet, and now my master is you. I won't go to Julian, Angelica said without hesitation. Hearing Angelica's words, Beatrice wanted to say something, but because of Wuming's presence, Beatrice didn't dare to speak. When did I become your master? Wuming said helplessly. From the moment you picked me up, you are my master. Angelica's eyes were emotionless. Seeing this, Wuming frowned. Displacement magic was really cruel. Wuming also investigated Angelica. She was originally the eldest daughter of this generation of the Ainsworth family, Julian Ainsworth's elder sister, Angelica Ainsworth. She died 6 years ago when the Black Mud caused the Winterwood City crater disaster, and was resurrected by Julian, or Darius, with the displacement magic. The displacement magic had this drawback, that was, the person who was resurrected by the displacement magic would lose some things, such as memories and emotions. What Beatrice lost was her love for Julian, but with her own efforts, she fell in love with Julian again in the past 6 years. Angelica, on the other hand, had lost her feelings. A puppet without feelings was a complete prop. Angelica was such an existence. Angelica, who had lost her feelings, defined herself as a puppet. Therefore, even if she knew that Julian was her younger brother, Angelica still called Julian Lord Julian, and not her younger brother because she had no feelings for him. Then you can stay and be a maid in the Shoyu residence. Wuming did not know what to do with Angelica, who had no feelings for him. Human feelings were the most difficult to understand, and Wuming could do nothing about Angelica, who had lost the most difficult thing to understand. Wait until I find Julian and see if there is any way to restore Angelica. In fact, Wuming had another way to deal with Angelica, which was to give Angelica to Julian. However, this was not in line with Wuming's own principles. Wuming would not treat humans as objects. This was the choice of Wuming, who had turned from a human into a dragon. Humans were the most priceless treasures. Yes, Lord Wuming. With that, Angelica walked away. Needless to say, she must be carrying out her duties as a maid. Beatrice looked at Angelica, who walked away alone. Facing Wuming alone was enough to scare her. You should go back first. Remember to find a room for yourself. As soon as Wuming finished speaking, Beatrice ran away as fast as she could. Am I that scary? After temporarily solving the problem of Angelica and Beatrice, Wuming joined the kitchen and prepared the meal for the Shoyu residents with Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu. At the dining table, Wuming was still sitting at the head of the table. Little Black and Mayu sat on the left and right sides of Wuming respectively. Iria sat beside Mayu, and below them were Sakura Madu and Shiro Amiya. Below Little Black's row were Bazit, who looked calm, and Rin and Osaka and Livia, who looked at Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu with sad eyes. Angelica, on the other hand, used her status as a maid to reject Wuming and the others' invitation. Beatrice, on the other hand, chose a room and hid in it alone. When Tonging went to call her, Beatrice said that she was not hungry and would not eat. However, in Wuming's opinion, Beatrice was mainly because of Wuming's presence. However, this was also good. After all, tonight's banquet was held to celebrate defeating Ainsworth. The two of them were prisoners of war, but they were invited to the banquet where they defeated him. It was a little strange. Speaking of which, where did Gil Kun go? Iria looked at the empty seat opposite Wuming and asked curiously. Don't worry about him. Children will know to go home when they are hungry. Wuming waved his hand casually. At that moment, the door opened. Ah, I'm starving. Looks like I'm not late. Dinner has just started. Gil's voice came. Chapter 309. Gil sat across Wu Ming and looked at the delicious food in front of him happily. Ever since Wu Ming started fighting with Darius, Wu Ming noticed that Gil was missing. Although he did not know why Gil only came back now, he decided to ask that question after dinner. The most important thing now was to have a happy dinner. All right, since everyone is here, let the celebration officially begin. Wu Ming raised his glass and announced the start of the banquet. Everyone raised their glasses. Of course, Ilya Mayu and Xiaohei's glasses were filled with fruit juice. As for Rin and Osaka, Livia, Shiro Amiya, and Sakura Madu, who were still underage, naturally they drank fruit juice. As for young Gil, Wu Ming naturally prepared fruit juice for him since he had an underage face. However, that did not make young Gil unhappy. After all, young Gil's temper was the best that Wu Ming had ever seen. It seemed like only Bazette, who was already an adult, and Wu Ming, who was already an adult, he was definitely less than 100 years old. 50 would be too much. Had wine in their glasses. By the way, the wine was provided by young Gil out of friendship. The wine that Bazette drank was diluted. If an ordinary person drank too much of the wine of God, they would die. Cheers! Everyone said in unison. Wu Ming finished the god's wine in the cup in one gulp and exhaled happily. This wine is still the best, Wu Ming said happily and poured himself another glass. It seems like Sensei hasn't drunk for a long time. You really liked this wine when you were in Uruk. Young Gil took a sip of his drink and took out a few bottles of the wine of God from the gate of Babylon and tossed them to Wu Ming. Wu Ming caught the god's wine and kept it in his precious artifact. Even I sometimes envy you, Gil. Wu Ming joked. Wu Ming was naturally referring to Gil's gate of Babylon. Young Gil had already retrieved his rank card. Although he didn't know why he didn't use it and kept it as it was, he had already taken back control of the gate of Babylon. That was why young Gil could give Wu Ming a few bottles of God's wine without a care. The reason why Wu Ming, who possessed the Manchala phalanx, said so was because the items that Wu Ming and Gil possessed were different. The last king was given the mission to kill all of the God Slayers. Each time Rama killed all of the God Slayers, the gods would give Rama many weapons. As time went by, almost all of the god relics were stored in the Manchala formation. However, these god relics were basically offensive. After all, one couldn't just give a warrior a bottle of wine and ask him to fight a battle. Therefore, the god relics that the gods gave Rama were mostly weapons. However, Gil's Gate of Babylon was different. The Gate of Babylon contained 2/3 of the treasures in the world. Although it was only 2/3, most of the treasures were in Gil's treasure vault. As for the definition of treasures, as long as Gil recognized something as valuable as a treasure, it would be collected by him. In other words, it wasn't just weapons. Countless non-weapon treasures were also collected by the Gate of Babylon. Although Wu Ming did not like drinking, it would be great if there was good wine. If it's master, you can still get it if you want to drink, can't you? Young Gil smiled. Wu Ming smiled too. Young Gil was right. The meaning of this was that Wu Ming could go to other worlds. Unknown worlds represented unknown treasures. Moreover, with the support of his origin, it could be said that to a certain extent, Wu Ming could indeed get whatever he wanted. That's great. I'd like to try the god's wine too. Xiaohei looked at Wu Ming with a smile. No. Xiaohei, you're not an adult yet. Even Sister Lin and the rest drink. You should just give me a drink. Ilya, who was sitting diagonally opposite Xiaohei, looked at Xiaohei angrily. Ilya was not angry because Xiaohei wanted to drink. Instead, it was because Xiaohei was sitting in the seat that Ilya wanted to sit in. It was natural for Mayu to sit beside Wu Ming. On the other side, Xiaohei tricked Ilya into sitting in the seat beside Wu Ming. That was why Ilya was so angry. Ma, what does it matter? Nothing will happen if you only drink a little. Xiaohei naturally knew why Ilya was so angry. After hearing Ilya's retort, Xiaohei hugged Wu Ming's arm and rubbed against it. Then he looked at Ilya proudly. You let go of me. Ilya's face instantly turned red and she stuttered. Although she had experienced Xiaohei's bold actions many times, the thin-skinned Ilya was still very embarrassed. Ilya, calm down. Mayu comforted Ilya, whose face was red from anger and embarrassment. Cold sweat trickled down her forehead. Wu Ming lightly knocked Xiaohei's head and said with a slightly stern tone, Alright, eat properly. Stop messing around. Whoa, big brother hit me. I'm so sad. Xiao Hei, who was knocked on the head, instantly made a heartbroken expression and looked pitifully at Wu Ming. Wu Ming helplessly shook his head. Then Wu Ming used Xiao Hei's spoon to scoop up some food and brought it to Xiao Hei's mouth. Come off. Wu Ming looked at Xiao Hei and said, eh, eh, eh. Not only Ilya, but even Mayo's face turned red. The two of them let out strange cries. Xiao Hei was also surprised. But he instantly reacted. Xiao Hei let out an sound and swallowed the food that Wu Ming fed him in one gulp. The food that big brother fed me personally is really delicious. Xiao Hei even licked the corner of his mouth. Wu Ming shook his head and put down Xiao Hei's spoon. Wu Ming picked up Ilya's and Mayo's spoons and made a feeding action for them. Come on, everyone has a share. Wu Ming smiled. However, Ilya and Mayu were a little shy. Slowly, Mayu ate first. Mayu gently ate the food that Wu Ming fed her. Her face was extremely red. But, it's delicious. Mayu said. Ilya, if you're not going to eat it, I'll have to do it for you. Xiao Hei looked at Ilya, who did not eat for a long time, and made a threat. Don't even think about it. Ilya instantly pouted. With an she swallowed the food that Wu Ming fed her. Wu Ming put down their spoons and said to the three of them, Alright, eat properly. When Sakura Madu saw this scene, she felt that it was very novel. Then, she did the same thing to Shiro Amiya. Come on, senpai. Sakura Madu looked at Shiro Amiya with blushing cheeks. It must be said that Sakura Madu was a very shy person. She was bold to do such a thing to Shiro Amiya in front of so many people. Sakura. That. Shiro Amiya scratched his face in embarrassment. However, in the end, he still swallowed the food that Sakura Madu fed him. Rip. Suddenly, the sound of cloth being torn was heard. Rin and Osaka and Livia smiled elegantly. The tablecloth in front of them was torn in half. You guys continue. Nothing happened. Rin and Osaka and Livia continued to smile. Shiro Amiya felt that it was better for him to not ask any more questions. Meanwhile, Bazette, who was eating delicacies by himself, wiped his mouth. How boring. Then he kept moving his knife and chopsticks as he quickly ate the food. There aren't many opportunities to eat for free. I must grab hold of them. He thought to himself. Laughter kept coming out of the Shuasuki residence. The moon seemed to be infected by the laughter. The moonlight was especially clear and bright as it illuminated the Shuasuki residence. Chapter 310. It was a beautiful day with no clouds for thousands of miles. The sun shone on the earth, covering everything on the earth with a layer of brilliance. Wu Ming held a small black box in his hand and sat under the sun with his eyes closed. Now a week had passed since the last battle between Wu Ming and Darius. After the celebration banquet a week ago, Wu Ming went to find Julian the next day. Wu Ming found Julian easily. To Wu Ming's surprise, Julian rebuilt a house in the forest near Winterwood City. Although it was not as big as the previous Ainsworth Castle, it could be regarded as a small villa. Coincidentally, the forest where Julian built his villa was close to the Shuoyue mansion. After all, the original address of the Shuoyue mansion was the Weigong Mansion, and the Weigong Mansion was built on the land that Weigong Jishi bought on the edge of Fuyuki City. In this way, Wu Ming and Julian could be said to have become neighbors. Naturally, the fact that the two became neighbors could not be hidden from Shiro Amiya. After Shiro Amiya learned that Julian was fine and had escaped the fate of the Ainsworth family, he ran to Julian excitedly to catch up. Although Julian still hated Shiro Amiya very much, Julian still cherished this rare friendship. Shiro Amiya even stayed at Julian's house that night. This made Sakura Madu quite worried. After all, Julian and Shiro Amiya both lived together. Julian was a great enemy for Sakura Madu. Just kidding. After that, Wu Ming told Beatrice about Julian's situation and couldn't wait to find Julian. Julian also let Beatrice live with him for the time being with the guilty mentality of, after all, I used her. This made Beatrice happy for a long time. It was said that Beatrice had prepared more than a dozen night attack plans. On the other hand, Julian was at a loss when it came to his elder sister, Angelica. Although Angelica had died a long time ago, and Julian also regarded Angelica as a puppet with his sister's skin during this time, Angelica was still his sister. This puppet had his sister's personality attached to it. Julian gave the strongest Gilgamesh card to Angelica. From this point, it could be seen that Julian still had a sibling relationship with Angelica. Since she has become your maid, let her stay in your house for now. That was what Julian meant. Just like that, Angelica became an official maid of the Shoyu residence. And the black square box in Wuming's hand was Pandora's box. All along, Pandora's box had been hidden by Darius at the top of Ainsworth Castle. But even so, Erica was still connected to Pandora's box. Erica, on the other hand, created Pandora and Pandora's box because the gods wanted to bestow disaster upon humans. It could be said that Pandora's true form was Pandora's box. It could be understood that the Holy Grail produced a personality and body. She was Mayu. Pandora's box produced a body and personality independent of the box, and that was Erica. Although she wasn't inseparable from the Holy Grail like Mayu, Erica was still connected to Pandora's box. This Pandora's box was given to Wuming by Julian when he met him again. This box is no longer empty, but even so, I think it should be of some use to you. At that time, after Julian finished speaking, Julian didn't wait for Wuming's reply and threw Pandora's box to Wuming. In the end, Julian added another sentence. This is also Erica's choice. She said that you bring her warmth and you need this. With that, Julian left. Wuming was left with a helpless expression. However, Wuming really needed Pandora's box. In the courtyard, Wuming collected his thoughts and ended his research on Pandora's box for the day. At that moment, Angelica, who had just arrived, walked up to Wuming and reported, "Lord Wuming, the large hole at the edge of Winterwood City has been repaired." Angelica, who was wearing a maid's uniform, said, "Thank you for your hard work, Angelica." Wuming comforted her. Angelica bowed slightly to return the greeting. After Winterwood City broke away from the Ainsworth family, or rather, Darius's control, Wuming successfully took over Winterwood City and became the manager of Winterwood City. Because of the parallel world, although this world had the Inosaka family, there was no Rin in Osaka. Winterwood City had always been managed by the Ainsworth family. Of course, this was the result of Wuming's deliberate indulgence. Now the manager of Winterwood City was the Amiya family. After all, Amiya's identity as Wuming still had some influence in Winterwood City in this parallel world. Some of the staff of the clock tower, and even the higher-ups of Winterwood City, who had connections with magician, didn't pay much attention to the change of manager of Winterwood City. From the perspective of the clock tower, it was normal for a small city in the Far East to have a manager change. It was nothing more than a family defeating the original manager, and the original manager's family became a vassal. As long as the new manager was still nominally under the management of the clock tower, there was no problem. Of course, Zelik also played a role in this matter. For the higher-ups of Winterwood City who knew about Magician's World, it didn't matter who the manager was. It was just a change of partners. As for the repair of the large hole in Winterwood City, Wuming didn't let Julian undertake it. Within this week, Wuming contracted the repair of the large hole in Winterwood City, and the manager of this project was Angelica. Although Angelica didn't have Gilgamesh's class card, her use of replacement magic could be said to be superb. Even a first-rate magician couldn't withstand Angelica's tricks. Therefore, Wuming gave this task to Angelica. It had to be said that Angelica was indeed useful as a subordinate. This was because Angelica had been a genius before she died. After she was turned into a puppet, her advantages were revealed. She carried out the task seriously, didn't procrastinate, didn't cut corners, and was capable of doing things. In less than a week, she finished repairing the large hole in Winterwood City. For any lord, this was a valuable subordinate. It was no wonder that Julian and Darius kept using Angelica. Although Wuming didn't know why Darius wanted to abandon Angelica, he didn't need to know. Anyway, he was the one who benefited. By the way, Angelica, do you still have a free class card? Wuming suddenly had a thought. Chapter 311. Yes. As Angelica spoke, she took out a class card, but there was no image on it. Ainsworth had spent a lot of time experimenting in order to create class cards. These blank class cards were the failed products of his experiments. These failed products didn't have any heroic spirit power. After using the card, it would turn into ashes, and the user wouldn't gain any power. Thank you. Wu Ming received the class card and thanked her. You're too kind, Lord Wu Ming. Angelica bowed slightly. A maid isn't a servant. You're worthy of my thanks. After saying that, Wu Ming left without waiting for Angelica's response. Angelica stood on the spot and pondered for a moment. Then, she got up and bowed slightly in the direction Wu Ming left in the courtyard where Angelica was the only one left. Yes, Lord Wu Ming. In the Shoyu residence, Ilya pulled Mayu along as they sat in front of the television and watched magical girl dramas. How is it? How is it, Mayu? This is good, isn't it? I didn't expect this world to also have magical girl samurai Musashi. Ilya was excited. However, Little Black, who was watching the show out of boredom, had a look of disdain. Seriously, Ilya, you still like these magical girls? You've already become a real magical girl. What's wrong with that? Can't I like watching magical girl dramas just because I've become a magical girl? Ilya retorted with a red face. However, the effect of her rebuttal wasn't that great. Oh ho, as expected of Ilya. You can actually say such things. Little Black looked at Ilya as though it had seen something interesting. Ilya stared back at Little Black with a red face. Her puffed-up cheeks were incomparably adorable. However, the two of them didn't notice that Mayo's expression was rather gloomy. It disregards the laws of physics and flies at high speed. It's impossible for humans to do this. Mayu had a look of disbelief. Wu Ming walked over from behind the three of them and instantly placed his hand on Mayo's head. Brother Wu Ming. Mayu was shocked. She turned around and looked at the person. She only calmed down when she saw Wu Ming. I've already told you to watch more anime, but you just wouldn't. You just had to watch shows that weren't suitable for children. Wu Ming smiled dotingly. But don't get me wrong. Programs that are not suitable for children are programs that a large number of graduate students in medicine, biology, and even military science should watch. It was also because of this that Mayu became the perfect superhuman that Ilya spoke of. She knew almost everything. Really? Brother Wu Ming, you're so annoying. Mayu blushed as she felt the warmth of Wu Ming's palm. Big brother. Little Black and Ilya stopped glaring at each other when they saw Wu Ming. Ilya Blackie. Wu Ming greeted the two. Brother Wu Ming, are you done with your work? It feels like you're very early today. Mayu asked with concern. Ever since he obtained Pandora's box, Wu Ming would conduct research for a period of time every day. The research time was fixed every day. Hence, Wu Ming, who had completed his research early today, attracted Mayo's attention. I have some ideas. Don't worry. Wu Ming patted Mayo's little head again as he spoke. Speaking of which, where did Bazette go? Wu Ming asked. He had asked Bazette to look after the three Lolas until Wu Ming finished his research. But now, Bazette had disappeared. Because I wanted to eat ice cream, I asked Big Sister Bazette to buy it. Ilya smiled embarrassedly. Now that you mention it, I remember that it's still summer in Ilya's world. On the second day after the celebration banquet, Wu Ming sent Ilya and the others back to the parallel world. Along the way, Wu Ming also set up teleportation doors at the Shoyu Mansion and Emiya Mansion. Those were the doors that could travel between the two parallel worlds. Rin and Osaka and Luvia had to report on their mission, so they returned to the British Clock Tower. Bazette stayed behind because he was still considered Wu Ming's subordinate. Hence, he did not return to Ilya's parallel world. It had to be said that this was a sad story. As for Ilya and Blackie, they came here because the weather there was too hot. Firstly, they were here to look for Mayu. Secondly, they were here to relieve themselves from the heat. After all, because this world was once on the verge of extinction, the Earth's axis had shifted a lot. This caused Ilya's world to be in hot summer while Mayo's world was in cold winter. But it seemed that the heavens were happy because Darius was defeated. It didn't snow much in the past few days, and the temperature wasn't that cold anymore. Instead, it was very refreshing. But no matter what, Ilya and Blackie had just come from the hot summer. In addition, Mayu couldn't resist the double temptation of Ilya and Blackie, so Bazette was forced to leave to buy ice cream. Of course, Bazette left through the back door. Wuming was in the front yard. If Bazette left, he would definitely be discovered by Wuming. You three, be careful not to get a stomachache. Wuming helplessly patted their heads one by one as a warning. Ilya and Blackie chuckled. Mayu blushed and lowered her head. Ah, big brother, have you completed your research? At that moment, Shiro Amiya's voice sounded. They looked toward the source of the voice. Shiro Amiya was wearing travel attire and carrying a large suitcase. He looked at everyone with a smile. Bro. Mr. Shiro, are you going to do something? Ilya asked in puzzlement. Blackie also had a curious look on his face. If it's wrong, he's going to England, Mayu explained. England? Ilya and Blackie were puzzled. It's like this. I'm going to England's clock tower to continue my magic cultivation, Shiro Amiya said with a smile. So sudden? Blackie was a little surprised. After all, they had defeated the final boss and could finally have a good rest. Shiro Amiya was going to cultivate again. I was the one who suggested Shiro go, Wuming said. Big brother suggested it? Ilya and Blackie looked at Wuming. Yes. After all, the manager of Winterwood City is now the Amiya family in name. If Shiro doesn't learn magic well, he won't be able to live up to the manager's name. After Wuming said that, Mayo's eyes dimmed. Moreover, I also gained a lot of things from the clock tower. It would be too heartless to leave them behind. Shiro Amiya touched the back of his head. Also, Sakura will go with Shiro. You don't have to worry. Ainsworth was defeated. Sakura could return home that she didn't dare to return before. Moreover, Sakura Madu went home to sell her property and go to England with Shiro Amiya. As for why she sold her property, she was going to change her name to Amiya Sakura in the future. She didn't leave a way out for herself. By the way, because Shiro was about to leave, Wuming wasn't in a hurry to exchange the Shuuyua mansion and Amiya mansion. The mansion in Mayo's world was still the Shuuyua mansion, and the mansion in Ilya's world was the Amiya mansion. I still have a plane to catch, so I won't chat for now. Goodbye everyone. After saying goodbye to everyone, Shiro Amiya left the Shuuyua mansion. At this time, Wuming noticed that Mayo's face was a little gloomy. Chapter 312. When Wuming said this, Ilya and Little Black also noticed that Mayo's expression was a little abnormal. What's wrong, Mayu? Are you not feeling well? Ilya said worriedly. If you're not feeling well, you must tell us. Little Black also had a concerned expression. Brother Wuming, I originally thought that you let Brother Shiro go to the Time Tower to train himself. Mayu lowered her head, and her bangs blocked Mayo's eyes. Wuming instantly understood. He squatted down and hugged Mayu with both hands. You let Brother Shiro go to the Time Tower to train, so that he can take on the important responsibility of Winterwood City's manager. Then what about you? Mayu continued. Ilya and Little Black also thought of something and looked at Wuming. Are you going to leave me again, leave this home? Mayu raised her head and looked at Wuming. Her tears could not stop flowing. Yes, I'm going to leave this place. Wuming did not appear to be panicking. He said very calmly. Big brother? Ilya and Little Black were surprised. But Wuming wiped Mayo's tears and said earnestly, this is something that I have to do. May you forgive me. After saying that, Wuming hugged Mayu in his arms. Ilya and Little Black also fell silent. No matter what, Wuming was a root dragon, a legendary divine dragon. He must have his own mission. I know that this is a mission that Brother Wuming has to do, but... Mayo's dried tears flowed again. But I can't bear to part with you, big brother. Mayo's last big brother was shouted in an extremely loud voice, and it almost penetrated the room. Wuming did not finish his words. Ilya and Little Black continued to maintain their silence. Only Mayu kept crying. Brother Wuming hugged me for the first time when we first met. Mayu began to recall. My family is dead, and so is my mother. Although I don't remember them, that sadness still lingered in my heart. At that time, I didn't understand all of this. Wuming hugged Meiyu tightly. It's you, brother Wuming, who saved me from this sadness. You gave me love, gave me a home, and gave me hope to survive. At that moment, Meiyu looked at the back of her hand. Although brother Wuming was my servant at that time, I don't feel that Wuming was fulfilling the responsibility of a servant to his master. Then, Meiyu raised her head and looked at Wuming. I feel that brother Wuming really treated me as a younger sister, and took care of me with all his heart. My heart tells me that this feeling is incomparably real. Meiyu pressed her heart and continued to look at Wuming. That's why I chose to become a magical girl. I want to reduce brother Wuming's burden. I hope that I can help you, and I hope that you don't have to work so hard. Meiyu threw herself into Wuming's arms and did not say anything else. Ilya and Little Black, on the other hand, sensibly did not say anything and waited. I'm sorry, brother Wuming. I'm too stubborn. I've caused you trouble. Meiyu, who was lying in Wuming's arms, let out an unclear and weak voice. How could that be? Meiyu, you're my younger sister. No matter what, I won't feel that you've caused me trouble. Wuming was still smiling gently as he caressed Meiyu's cheek. It's been hard on you, Meiyu. You must have felt terrible when I left you last time, right? After all, the gentler a person was, the fiercer they would be when they were angry. This was because this anger had accumulated over a long period of time. Meiyu's outburst this time was the same. Making a young girl cry, I'm really a coward, Wuming said self-deprecatingly. No, brother Wuming isn't a coward, Meiyu immediately retorted. She looked at Wuming with her little face puffed up. Wuming snickered. When Meiyu saw Wuming laughing, even Ilya and Little Black laughed. I'm sorry, Ilya, Meiyu. I've made the two of you worry. Meiyu recovered and said to the two of them. Sigh, really. Meiyu should have vented it out earlier. Little Black waved his hand helplessly. That's right, that's right. If you're unhappy, you should look for your friends and family to confide in. If it were me, I might have run to the park and coincidentally be discovered by my mother. Then I would have jumped into my mother's arms and cried. Ilya smiled. Little Black looked at Ilya with a displeased expression. Little did she know that Little Black had been like this. Brother Wuming, thank you. Also, there's no need to apologize to your family. Meiyu pointed out the matter of Wuming apologizing to Meiyu just now. Ha ha ha, it's my fault. How does Meiyu want to punish me? Wuming rubbed his head and smiled generously. I want brother Wuming to promise me that he will definitely be able to solve the problem safely and return to my side safely. As she said this, Meiyu extended her pinky. All right then. I hereby swear that I will definitely be able to solve the problem safely and return to my little sister Meiyu's side safely. As he said this, Wuming also extended his pinky and made a pinky promise with Meiyu. It's a promise. Yep, it's a promise. I also want to make a pinky promise. Ilya said sourly. This is a promise between brother and sister. Why are you joining in the fun? Little Black complained helplessly. I already called Big Brother Big Brother. No matter what, we can be considered brother and sister. Ilya strongly refuted. According to what you said, I can also be considered as Big Brother's little sister. If Big Brother wants to make a pinky promise, then you can make a pinky promise with all of us. Little Black smiled mischievously. Yes, yes, Wuming bitterly smiled helplessly. However, Wuming still extended his pinky and made a pinky promise with Ilya and Little Black. I hereby swear that I will definitely be able to solve the problem safely and return to my little sister Ilya and Little Black's side safely. Wuming made another oath. Then it's a promise, Big Brother. Ilya and Little Black said in unison. Ah, it's a promise. Everyone. Then, the four of them laughed. Amidst their laughter, the four of them did not notice that a faint golden light was emitted from their bodies. The golden light instantly disappeared as if it had never happened. Outside the door, Bazette stood there obediently. He did not choose to enter. Bazette was holding a few melted ice creams in his hand. Although the ice creams had already flowed to his hand, Bazette still did not move. Bazette had actually returned a long time ago. When he walked to the door, he heard Mayu call out, "Big brother." Originally, Bazette thought that an accident had occurred and wanted to rush in. However, a second before he was about to make a move, Bazette felt that something was amiss. Thus, he did not break the door open and rush in. For once, Bazette, whose intelligence was online, did not disturb the conversation between these four siblings. Instead, he stayed outside the door. "It's a promise?" Chapter 313. Early the next morning, Wuming switched the locations of the Shoyu mansion and the Amiya mansion. As Wuming would be leaving soon, Wuming placed the Shoyu mansion that Mayu was used to living in back in the Amiya mansion, so that it would be convenient for the little Lolas to connect. Before Wuming restored the Shoyu mansion, he informed Julian, "I'm going back to another parallel world. I'm taking Angelica with me." Then, before Julian could explode, Wuming slipped away. But there was no need to worry that Shiro Amiya and the others couldn't find Wuming when they returned. Wuming had already told Shiro Amiya how to travel to a parallel world. As long as Shiro Amiya wished, he could travel to a parallel world from the special room in the Amiya mansion at any time. But this didn't mean that Shiro Amiya was a mage. Zelik could freely travel to parallel worlds. This was the benefit of mastering the second method. Apart from that, Zelik could also mobilize the magic power of other worlds and other operations related to parallel worlds. On the other hand, Shiro Amiya relied solely on the equipment that Wuming set up in the Amiya mansion. The two couldn't be compared at all. Not only did Wuming and Zelik have the ability to travel to parallel worlds, but the Ainsworth family also had the ability to travel to parallel worlds. The fact that Angelica and Beatrice came to the Amiya mansion was an example. But according to Angelica, there were huge drawbacks when they used the technology to travel to parallel worlds. Not only did they have to set up a magical formation in advance, but they also needed a large number of worlds to set up the magical formation. The amount of magic power to activate the magical formation was also a problem. Moreover, the effect of the magical formation had a time limit. As Ainsworth used the displacement magic to swap the surrounding space and the same location in the parallel world, the amount of magic power required was huge. This was also the reason why Angelica and the others had come out of the Yuanzhong Mountains. They had borrowed the Holy Grail, which contained a large amount of magic power. With the help of the Holy Grail, the substitution magic was successfully activated. The Yuanzhong Mountain in Elia's world and the Yuanzhong Mountain in Mayo's world were exchanged, and the two of them successfully arrived in Elia's world. Back then, when Shiro Amiya made a wish, the Holy Grail had used a similar method. Mayu and the Yuanzhong Mountain were transferred to Ilia's world, while the Yuanzhong Mountain was transferred to Mayo's world. This had a similar effect as displacement magic. However, it was permanent because Mayo's world's Yuanzhong Mountain followed Mayu to Ilya's world's Yuanzhong Mountain and never changed again. Ilya's Yuanzhong Mountain had always been Mayo's Yuanzhong Mountain. The reason why Angelica and Beatrice were able to escape from Wuming's assassination was that Angelica had used the parting sword to directly open a passage to a parallel world and survived. And to be able to accurately arrive at the target world could only mean that Angelica's luck was very strong. The bad ones basically died in the space-time turbulence, and the good ones generally went to the wrong parallel world. This was also why Wuming was experienced with Angelica being able to return safely. To put it simply, parallel worlds weren't so easy to travel. If Wuming didn't have the talent ability to adapt to space-time, he wouldn't dare to travel randomly. But there was no other way. The talent ability of the root dragon to travel between worlds had the adaptability to space-time. Now that he thought about it, this passive ability was really good. After returning to Ilya's world, because it was summer vacation, Mayu and the others didn't have to go to school. As a result, Ilya and Blackie came to look for Mayu almost every day, along with Ilya's good friends, Yujianza and the others. As for Wuming, apart from studying Pandora's box, he spent the rest of his time happily playing with Mayu and the others. He visited the house of Einstein Barons and greeted Mrs. Alicefield, Scylla, Lislet, Shiro Amiya, and the others. Wuming enjoyed this simple and ordinary life. Then, on this day, Wuming found what he wanted from Pandora's box. Wuming sat in the courtyard. Because he found a clue he wanted, Wuming rejected Meiyo's invitation to go out and play. At this time, Wuming closed his eyes and immersed his mind in Pandora's box. Wuming floated in nothingness. This was the empty interior of Pandora's box. At this moment, there was a trace of destruction in front of Wuming. It was very strange. There was no physical object inside Pandora's box, but now there was a trace of destruction. This is the power of origin. Wuming put his hand on the trace of destruction and softly analyzed. Then Wuming used his origin power. The trace touched by Wuming let out a light, and shadows emerged from the trace. These are. Wuming was surprised. In an incomparably mysterious place, countless black mud gathered together. There was a little light in the black mud, and the light was pulled out of the black mud by an unknown power. It was visible to the naked eye that it was an infant in swaddling clothes. Then, the infant was sent out of this mysterious place by this unknown power. As if it had lost something important, the black mud surged even more wildly. Soon, the black mud spread out from this mysterious place like a scattered army looking for the infant. Then, a stream of black mud came to a certain world and entered a black box. The item in the box fused with the black mud. Then, after an unknown period of time, the box was opened by someone. Finally, a ray of light shot out from the black mud. Then, the black mud was burned by the sun and completely disappeared. This was the process of the black mud fusing with the disaster in Pandora's box, from the beginning to the end. Like a movie, it was displayed in front of Wuming. After seeing all this, Wuming stopped the transmission of his origin power and let go of the trace. Then this trace turned into a palm-sized black object that looked like a badge. Wuming fell silent. That infant was undoubtedly Wuming himself. Although he didn't know why, Wuming was very sure of it. And that mysterious place was the source. Although he couldn't see it clearly, there was no doubt about it. The light in the black mud was the hope in Pandora's box. And the one that was burned to death by the sun was Wuming's incarnation of the sun. What is the true identity of this black mud? Wuming muttered to himself in confusion. After thinking for a while, Wuming picked up the item with the black badge. In an instant, the badge attached to the back of Wuming's hand like a maggot, forming a black mark that looked like a dragon-shaped command seal. In the outside world, Wuming opened his eyes, looked at the black mark on the back of his hand, and said solemnly, "Looks like I have to leave this world as soon as possible." Chapter 3:14. Early the next morning, Wuming made breakfast early, used magic to keep it warm, and left the Shoyu mansion. England clock tower. Outside a room at the top, a purple-black portal opened, and Wuming walked out. As if they were very familiar with each other, Wuming didn't knock on the door, but directly pushed the door open and entered. The first thing he saw was a strong old man with red eyes. After all, they were old acquaintances. Wuming sat on the sofa and spoke directly. "Did you already know that those things had merged with the disaster in Pandora's box?" Unsurprisingly, the world of Meiyu was about to be destroyed because Ainsworth did something to the black mud in Pandora's box. Wuming didn't believe that Zelik, who solved the crisis of the world's destruction, didn't know about the black mud. "Yes, but it was something that was fated to be with you, so I kept it." Zelik looked at Wuming with his pair of unusually bloody red eyes. Wuming didn't want to be outdone, and also used his own red eyes to meet Zelika's eyes. Although both of them had red eyes, Zelika's red eyes leaned toward blood and was quite bloody, while Wuming's red eyes leaned toward gems and were deep and mysterious. "Well, forget it. I'm not here to condemn you this time, I'm leaving." After all, the black mud wasn't a big threat to Wuming. "Are you going to find the black mud?" Although it was a question, Zelik said with a certain tone. "A piece of black mud is enough to cause the destruction of the world. I don't have to say more about the impact of the other black mud on other worlds." Wuming's fingers gently tapped on the coffee table in front of him as he said faintly, "What's more, the black mud has a lot to do with my background." Wuming thought, "I see, protecting the world is the mission of the origin dragon?" Zelik said, In a sense, you're right. Then Wu-Ming stood up and was about to leave. I can feel that the suppression is getting weaker and weaker, Zelik suddenly said. Wu-Ming stopped in his tracks when he heard that. Ever since Wu-Ming returned to this world, he had not communicated with the suppressive force. This was also one of the reasons why Wu-Ming needed to rely on his own body's power to make a direct change. Wu-Ming tried to contact Alea through the power of origin, but Alea did not reply to him. Although Gaia responded to Wu-Ming's call, the response was intermittent, as if she was too busy. Wu-Ming had a hunch that something bad had happened to Gaia and Alea ever since he learned that there were countless black mud going out to other worlds. Let's go look for the person who is connected to many stars and can resolve this crisis, Zelik suddenly said. You really have a bad sense of humor, Kitty. Wu-Ming turned his head and looked at Zelik with an amused gaze. Actually, the you in the other world is a clone, right? Wu-Ming said something shocking. Although I don't understand the second method, I know that it's related to the parallel worlds. After you mastered the second method, you've already fused yourself from all the worlds, right? And now, because of the appearance of the black soil, you've learned about me and created an opportunity for me to come to this world. You want to use this to lead me onto the right path, right? Wu-Ming crossed his arms and said calmly, "Ha! As expected of the legendary life form from the big source," Zelik laughed. "That's right. I can travel through parallel worlds. When I was traveling through parallel worlds, I accidentally learned about the disaster and your arrival. So, I used the second law to create a clone of myself, and placed it in almost every parallel world, waiting for your arrival." Zelik laughed, not embarrassed at being exposed at all. But this also happened to save some worlds that were on the verge of destruction. However, I can't resolve the disaster in that world. The only thing I can do is to seal them in Pandora's box of that world, and delay the disaster. Zelik waved his hand. Wu-Ming finally understood that Zelik was a genius who could create class cards. Such a genius couldn't open Pandora's box, and it took him 1,000 years of effort to completely open it. It turned out that Zelik had used the second law to seal Pandora's box. If I'm not wrong, the you in that world is actually your original body, Wu-Ming said. That's right. After all, I've already found you. I've also retrieved the clones in other worlds. You really have a bad taste. Wu-Ming looked at Zelik helplessly. Ha ha, isn't this interesting? This old man is having a good time, Zelrich said with a big laugh. Well, in that case you should know about that world. The world that Wu-Ming was talking about was a world where a large amount of black soil existed. It was the world that Wu-Ming was guided to by the dragon-shaped black command spell in his hand. This dragon-shaped black command spell was actually a signal transmitter that could help Wu-Ming find other worlds where the black soil existed. However, this command spell could also allow the black soil in other worlds to find Wu-Ming. It was also because of this that Wu-Ming chose to leave this world as soon as possible. Of course, I can no longer enter the world with the most black soil. It has completely surrounded the periphery of the world. That's why I chose your help. I can't do anything anymore, Zelik said. However, if it's a small portion of the black soil that invades, I can still resist it. Go in peace. Zelik smiled. I feel like you're implying something. Wu-Ming complained. Didn't you come here to ask me to protect your sister and the others? I'll agree. You make it sound like I'm begging you. Wu-Ming turned his head, opened the door and left. Zelik looked at the door and fell into deep thought. After a moment, Zelik spoke. Where's the origin dragon? He returned to the Shoyu mansion through the teleportation portal. At this moment, Meiyu was sitting on the sofa in a daze, while Angelica was standing beside Meiyu in a maid outfit. Brother Wu-Ming. When Meiyu saw Wu-Ming, she jogged over and hugged Wu-Ming. What's wrong? Why are you so excited? I didn't leave without saying goodbye. Wu-Ming smiled and patted Meiyu's little head. Meiyu lay in Wu-Ming's arms without saying anything. Master Wu-Ming, Meiyu hasn't eaten breakfast yet. Angelica bowed slightly and said, Really, how can you not eat? Wu-Ming pinched Meiyu's little nose. Brother Wu-Ming isn't here. I don't have an appetite. Meiyu blushed as if she was not used to this kind of pampering. Let's go eat together. Chapter 3:15. Then Wu Ming proposed to bring Meiyu to the amusement park. Moreover, it was only the two of them. This made Meiyu extremely happy. Although it was not bad to be with Ilya and the others, it was still better to have brother Wu Ming all to herself. This was not selfish. Every sister would want to be alone with the brother they liked. It was human nature. For the entire day, Wu Ming played with Meiyu. On the streets at night, Wu Ming held Meiyu's hand as they walked toward their home. "Meiyu, I'm leaving tonight," Wu Ming suddenly said. After saying that, Wu Ming easily felt Meiyu's body tremble. However, Meiyu instantly adjusted her body's condition in an attempt to prevent Wu Ming from noticing. However, Meiyu also knew that how could Wu Ming not notice? "I'm sorry, brother Wu Ming. I'm still a little." Meiyu lowered her head. She did not dare to look at Wu Ming. "You little idiot. I've told you many times. Don't apologize." Meiyu has nothing to apologize for. Wu Ming pressed down hard on Meiyu's little head as a punishment. I know. Brother Wu Ming, stop pressing down on my head." Although Meiyu was complaining, it was obvious from her expression that Meiyu was enjoying herself. "I've promised you. It's just a slight delay. I'll be back soon." Wu Ming smiled. I believe you, brother Wu Ming." Meiyu smiled at Wu Ming. Soon, Wu Ming and Meiyu returned to the Shoyu residence. Arriving at the door of Shoyu's house, Wu Ming and Meiyu entered the room and noticed that there were 2 pairs of shoes in the entryway. They seemed to be primary school-style shoes. Could it be that Ilya and Little Black are here? Meiyu first thought of her little friends. Most likely. Then Wu Ming patted Meiyu's head. "Let's go." Yes. Arriving at the living room, Ilya and Blackie were sitting on the sofa and watching television. There were 2 cups of drinks on the coffee table in front of them. Angelica was standing at the side. Needless to say, the drinks must have been prepared by Angelica. It had to be said that Angelica was becoming more and more like a mature maid. Her use of displacement magic had reached perfection and was of great help to the maid's work. "Ilya, Little Black." Meiyu called out their names and ran over. "Ah, Meiyu and Big Brother are back." Ilya stood up. "Really? Why did you come back so late?" "I was bored to death." Seeing that Wu Ming and Meiyu had arrived, Little Black instantly laid down on the sofa in an unsightly posture and spoke in a half-helpless and half-coquettish manner. Angelica bowed and reported to Wu Ming. "Lord Wu Ming, Miss Ilya and Miss Chloe have been here for some time. Thus, when you weren't here, I took the liberty to prepare drinks for them and let them watch television to pass the time." "Thank you for your hard work, Angelica. You can go and rest first." Wu Ming waved his hand at Angelica. "Yes." With that, Angelica left the living room. Then Wu Ming looked at Ilya and Little Black. "Why are you 2 here? Did something happen?" "Why? Big Brother doesn't welcome us? How sad. After all, I was once a member of this family." Little Black teased Wu Ming. "That, Big Brother, because Little Black and I were worried that you would leave without saying goodbye, so." Ilya's face was a little red. "That's why Ilya excitedly pulled me and jogged all the way here." Little Black waved his hand and looked at Ilya helplessly. This is all Little Black's fault. Who asked you to keep saying that Big Brother would leave without saying goodbye?" Ilya was so agitated that her face was flushed red. She pounced on Little Black helplessly and started punishing Little Black. Of course, it was just scratching his armpit. Wait a minute. What do you mean it's my fault? Didn't you also want to see Big Brother?" However, how could Little Black just sit there and wait for death? He flipped his hand and subdued Ilya. Damn it, I won't yield," Ilya said unyieldingly. Seeing this scene, Wu Ming and Meiyu broke out in a cold sweat awkwardly. Meiyu did it because she also had the same thought. Wu Ming did it because he indeed had the same thought. All right. Stop fooling around. Since you're here, there's no harm in telling you when I'm leaving. I'm preparing to leave tonight." Hearing Wu Ming say this, Ilya and Little Black stopped fooling around. "Is it that urgent, Big Brother?" Little Black was a little surprised. After all, there's an accident. I have to leave this world as soon as possible, Wuming said solemnly. Big brother, are you all right? Ilya looked at Wuming worriedly. Don't worry. It's just a little trouble. It won't get in the way. Wuming patted Ilya's head to console her. It's fortunate that we came tonight. Otherwise, Big Brother might have left without saying goodbye. Little Black said joyfully. Wuming could only smile awkwardly. But Big Brother left too suddenly. I don't have any gifts for Big Brother. Ilya touched her trouser pocket a little anxiously. There's no need. It's not like I'm not coming back. I'll solve the problem as soon as possible and come back as soon as possible. Wuming expressed that there was no need to give her any gifts. He made it seem as though he would never see her again. Haha, Ilya, you can't do it. It's just a gift. Watch me. Little Black looked at Ilya proudly. Then, she jumped into Wuming's arms and kissed Wuming's left cheek lightly. This prank kiss caused Wuming to freeze awkwardly on the spot. Then, Wuming smiled silently. Isn't this better? Turning around, Little Black smiled and looked at Ilya and Mayu, who were dumbfounded and blushing. You, what are you doing? Ilya shouted in panic. Although Mayu didn't say anything, her blushing face and lowered head showed that Mayu's heart wasn't calm. You can also choose not to give this gift. Ilya, I didn't force you. Of course, Mayu isn't the same. Little Black looked at Ilya with a teasing expression. And no. Ilya shouted in panic and instantly threw herself into Wuming's embrace. She gently kissed Wuming's right cheek and stopped after tasting it. Then, the blushing Ilya pulled Little Black and ran out of the living room. Wait a moment, Ilya. Little Black's sorrowful cry could be heard. Wuming touched his left and right cheeks that were kissed and smiled helplessly. These little guys. Then, Wuming noticed that Mayu was looking at his cheek. So Wuming looked at Mayu. What? Mayu wants to do it as well? Wuming teased. And no. Mayu blushed and lowered her head. However, Wuming went up and hugged Mayu. He kissed Mayu's forehead lightly. Brother Wuming. Mayu was shocked. Wuming looked into Mayu's eyes and said in detail. This is a reward for the obedient Mayu. I'm very glad that Mayu can become my little sister and bring me joy. Mayu was very touched. She leaned into Wuming's arms with a blissful expression. Me too. I'm very happy to be Brother Wuming's little sister. Chapter 316. After having dinner with the three Lolas and playing for a while, Wuming arranged for them to sleep. At night, Wuming stood alone on the roof, looking at the moon in the distance. Usually someone will come looking for me at this time, Wuming said without turning his head. Don't you think so, Gil? As the golden particles appeared, young Gil appeared beside Wuming. Are we leaving, teacher? Young Gil smiled gently. Yes, I feel it. Those things are coming. If we don't leave now, we'll be in trouble. Wuming was, of course, referring to the high-density black fog, hereinafter referred to as the black mud. Ever since the black dragon-shaped command charm appeared in Wuming's hand, Wuming vaguely felt that the black mud was moving toward the world he was currently in. Wuming was not afraid, but Wuming could not, and would not allow the black mud to affect Mayu and the others' daily lives. Seriously, do you want to come with me? Wuming looked at young Gil. Although young Gil had been missing for the past few days, young Gil had more or less learned about the black mud. After knowing that Wuming could trace the other worlds where the black mud was, young Gil suggested that he should go with him. Of course. Don't forget, you used to take me to other places to play. Gil smiled. Wuming could not help but recall what happened in Uruk. Although the Gil in front of him was not the Gilgamesh Wuming met, Wuming's experience in each parallel world was the same. In other words, young Gil also had the experience of playing with Wuming. But Wuming estimated that the adult version of Gilgamesh in this world had different adult memories from the Queen Gilgamesh Wuming knew. After all, a man and a woman, their experiences were similar, but they could never be the same. Ah, you were very likable when you were a child. Wuming recalled and looked at the moon. Well, I also have a headache about what I looked like when I grew up. Why did I become like that? Young Gil looked distressed and looked at Wuming helplessly. Maybe this is the king, my best disciple. I think so too, my only teacher. The night continued to deepen. The moon emitted soft and bright moonlight, shining on the master and disciple. The next day Mayu got up early. Mayu walked to Ilya and Black's room to take a look. Ilya and Xiaohei shouldn't be up yet. After that, Mayu went to the kitchen and began to prepare breakfast. If it's Brother Wuming, he should have left by now. Mayu was making breakfast absent-mindedly. After making breakfast, Mayu knocked on Ilya and Xiaohei's door and woke them up. Then Mayu put the breakfast on the table. When the last plate was placed, Mayu found a card on the table, which was the style of a class card. It's strange, there's nothing on the table, Mayu said doubtfully. Mayu had cleaned the table before placing the breakfast. It was impossible to miss a card, and it was a class card. I shouldn't have missed it. Also, could it be that Ilya's card accidentally fell here? Mayu knew that he was a little absent-minded just now. Perhaps he had missed something. With that in mind, Mayu picked up the class card. Caster Magician. Mayu looked at the card that depicted a magician wearing a magician's robe, holding a magic book and a staff, and read the words on the card. However, after reading the rank of the card, the Caster Magician rank card actually emitted a golden light, and the whole card was dyed in gold. This is what the teacher left for you. Suddenly, a child's voice came. Mayu quickly turned around and looked at the owner of the child's voice. Gilgamesh. Mayu was a little surprised. That's right, it was young Gil. Now young Gil was sitting on a dining chair, holding a wine glass in his hand, and taking a sip. Because Wuming needed to go back to the route. So Wuming asked young Gil to wait for him here. When Wuming went to the target world, he would summon young Gil. You disappeared for a few days. Why did you appear after Brother Wuming left? Mayu asked warily. No matter what, the other party was the most ancient king, the hero King Gilgamesh. Mayu was right. Young Gil went to visit this world out of interest, so he disappeared. Don't worry, the teacher asked me to give you that card. This was also why Mayu didn't notice the existence of the class card just now. Brother Wuming gave it to me. Mayu looked at the class card in her hand, a little stunned. Because the teacher changed the class card, the saver card was too burdensome for you to use, so Wuming chose to seal the power of his caster, magician, class into this empty card. And this card has been refined by the teacher, so it's different from the other class cards. It has supreme power, and the teacher hopes that it can protect you. Then, young Gil waved his hand helplessly. You should be content, Hyunryong, who protected the Uruk, protected a little girl. Your value in the teacher's eyes is much more important than the Uruk. Brother Wuming. Mayu muttered Wuming's name silently, and tears of joy fell from her eyes. Sigh. Mayu, why are you crying? Little Black, who came to the dining room first, saw Mayu crying and panicked. Sigh. Mayu, did Jilkoan bully you? Tell me, I'll avenge you. Ilya, who came one step later, saw Mayu crying. She then looked at young Jill who was sitting beside Mayu and instantly took out the ruby that refused to come out from her hair. Ruby transform. Aya, I'm still sleeping. I played games too late last night. Mayu is worthy of being from a rich family. And the games she brought are extraordinary. Ruby looked listless. This is not caused by me. Young Gil waved his hand helplessly, and casually took a sip of the wine in the glass. Sapphire came out from behind Ilya and looked at Mayu. What's the matter, Lord Mayu? Because there was no need to hide. Sapphire did not continue to hide in Mayu's hair. No, it's nothing, I'm just too happy. Mayu turned around. Although she was crying, Mayu showed an extremely happy smile. Sigh. Ilya, Little Black, Ruby, and Sapphire were dumbfounded. Seriously? Young Gil complained, and turned into golden particles and disappeared from the dining room. Teacher really has an ill-fated relationship. Chapter 317. Inside the Root of Origin, the gigantic body of the Root of Origin moved slightly. The dragon opened its ruby-like eyes. And through those eyes, one could see that the owner of those eyes was still a little confused. That was a sign of a delayed spirit conversion. Soon, The dragon's spirit was completely awake. Is it back? Wuming muttered to himself. Because Wuming did not intend to use a servant's clone to go to the target world, Wuming removed his servant's clone and prepared to use his main body to go to the target world. Wuming looked at his dragon claw, which was engraved with a black incantation similar to a dragon's. As expected, this incantation followed me. Wuming was worried that the incantation would not appear on his main body, but it seemed that his worries were unfounded. Then, Wuming looked at the sparse black mist around him, and a hint of displeasure appeared in his huge dragon eyes. Roar! Wuming opened his huge dragon mouth, and countless bolts of lightning containing the power of origin shot out, instantly destroying all the black mud in Wuming's vision. Just looking at it makes me unhappy, Wuming said in disdain. At that moment, the incantation on Wuming's dragon claw began to glow. The black light was like a sign of death, illuminating Wuming's huge dragon eyes. What's this? Wuming felt as if he was facing a great enemy. Wuming could more or less guess what had happened. Because Wuming came in when there was still a trace of black mud left inside the root of origin. The black mud acted like social animals, contacting countless of their own kind to surround Wuming. Coupled with the black incantation on Wuming's hand, the black mud that came to surround Wuming acted like a signal transmitter. And the black mud knew exactly where Wuming was. Perhaps the black mud was wreaking havoc outside the root of origin by now. That's good. It saves me the trouble of looking for you. Wuming's dragon eyes flashed with a hint of coldness. The reason why the origin dragon was called the origin dragon was because it could only unleash its full strength in the origin dragon. It could only be said that it was fortunate that the black mud did not have intelligence and did not know how to protect its source. If Wuming had come to the root with a lot of black mud, Wuming would have had no choice but to run. After all, the black mud could also use origin power. The other origins were chaotic, but this one was filled with gentleness. Wuming sat on the platform at the center of the root of origin and mobilized all of his origin power. In an instant, the boundless root of origin seemed to come alive and became chaotic. However, there were some sparks in the chaos. In an instant, countless black mud poured in from unknown directions, accumulating more and more. At this time, countless bolts of divine lightning burst out from the origin's chaos and destroyed all of the black mud. The newly arrived black mud also subconsciously used origin power. However, as the saying went, two fists cannot fight four hands. Wuming, who was in the dominant position, constantly destroyed the black mud. The mindless black mud did not know what a temporary retreat was, and all of them surged forward without thinking. Moreover, even when they began to use origin power, it only added a little burden to Wuming. Wuming increased his output, but the black mud still flew toward the flames like moths. Soon, the amount of black mud gradually decreased until the last bit was destroyed by Wuming's lightning. Despite this, Wuming did not feel at ease. Looking at the incantation on the back of his dragon claw, Wuming knew that the black mud was only a part of the problem. Not to mention the problem of the black mud in the other worlds was also a headache. If they coexisted with the ambitious fellows in the other worlds and received the power of origin power, not to mention reaching the great origin, no one would be able to stop them from doing evil. However, Wuming could not casually go out to deal with the great origin. If the black mud invaded when Wuming went out, Wuming would not even have a place to cry. Although it seemed that Wuming dealt with the invading black mud very easily, Wuming mainly relied on his origin power. If the black mud were to stay inside the great origin and Wuming attacked, Wuming would die like the black mud without even knowing how he died. Of course, Wuming would not be a suicide squad like the black mud. Wuming could still retreat. If that's the case, then I can only. Wuming's eyes flashed as he spoke. After a while, after half a day of work, Wuming raised his huge dragon claw and wiped the non-existent sweat. It's done. Now, it was visible to the naked eye that the great origin's interior was covered with a layer of membrane. In addition, Wuming's dragon body was covered with countless golden runes. The membrane was a protective measure that Wuming made to prevent the black mud from invading the great origin again. It was a membrane filled with origin power. The golden runes were an automatic technique that Wuming set up. Wuming decided to use his servant's method to go to the target world. When the black mud began to invade the Great Origin, the membrane would temporarily block it. After all, the black mud also had origin power. Although it could not be broken through instantly, it was enough to block it for a while. And while the black mud was blocked, the automatic technique that Wuming set up would be activated. Like a programmed automaton, Wuming's main body would automatically start to use origin power to deal with the black mud. And it would also automatically repair the damage to the membrane. Even if it did not work, Wuming could still contact his servant's clone and let his consciousness return to his main body. Although he could also split his consciousness, it would cause considerable damage to the mind, and in the long run, he might develop a split personality. Therefore, Wuming did not choose to split his consciousness. Everything is ready. Let's go to the new world. With that, Wuming slowly lay down and closed his eyes. The golden light split from Wuming's body. And just like when he changed classes, a space-time wormhole appeared, and the golden light flew in. And Wuming's main body fell into a deep sleep. A certain parallel world, 1994, Winterwood City, Japan. Near Winterwood City, inside the Great Origin Cave, where the Great Holy Grail was, a magic circle was automatically drawn in the Great Holy Grail's Great Origin Cave. As the drawing was completed, the Great Holy Grail's magic power was injected, and the magic circle lit up. A man wearing a pitch-black raincoat and an old-fashioned European-style black top hat stood in the center of the magic circle. The figure moved his legs in pitch-black leather shoes and walked out of the magic circle. Then he exclaimed, "This is the Great Origin Cave." Chapter 318. Job level, Saver real name, Wuming Master, None attribute, Lawful good ability points, Strength, A uncertain durability, A uncertain agility, A uncertain magic power, A uncertain luck, A uncertain relic, A uncertain job level skills, Origin energy EX, born from the origin, mastered the method of using the origin energy. Evil nemesis EX, Savior Saver, is righteous. Once identified by the Savior, Wuming, as the evil party and their actions have affected the world, they will be attacked by the world's energy of the same level. The degree of the attack is enough to kill and cause fatal effects. Old skills, Uncertain EX, has the ability to change one's job level and attributes at will. This is the convenience of being in the origin. Miracle, has the ability to use relics that do not belong to the current job level. These relics are not assigned to the current job level. Relic, Divine Sword of Salvation Excalibur, level, EX type. Divine Sword of Salvation distance. Maximum catch. It has the same name as the Sword of the Lake, and it has the same appearance as the Sword of the Lake. It is the amalgamation of the Manchala Formation. It can be broken down into the Manchala Formation. There are countless god relics in it. The Divine Sword has the power to save the world. It can release the lightning of salvation and the light of salvation. 12 powers God's Killer level, EX type. Divine Sword of Salvation distance. 1 maximum catch. 1 There were 12 incarnations of Dragon Seed, Giant, Warrior, Storm, Annihilation, Flood, Vitality, Dependence, Thunder God, Phoenix, Sun, and Magician. Each incarnation was comparable to a noble artifact. It was the upgraded version of the power obtained from killing the gods. Chapter 319. It's Winterwood City, and I was directly summoned by the Great Holy Grail. Wuming looked at the surroundings and said thoughtfully, "That's right, this man wearing a black leather jacket, black leather shoes, and a black top hat was Wuming. The reason why Wuming was dressed like this was because Wuming's current class was Assassin. Is my real name Jack the Ripper? Or is it an accident?" Wuming felt his own power and said helplessly, "After all, the class selection this time was automatically chosen by the Great Holy Grail." For Wuming, although it didn't mean that it didn't matter what class he was, Wuming wouldn't be troubled by the fact that he was an assassin. In Wuming's view, every class had its own benefits, Even the weakest assassin had its own benefits. Although my combat ability is weakened, it's still good to have my aura blocked. After all, I'm here to investigate, not to attack. With that, Wu Ming walked out of the Great Hollow of Winterwood City. Even if it was a parallel world, the structure of the Great Hollow of Yuanzhong Mountain was still the same. However, this world was quite strange. Isn't it a little too peaceful? Wu Ming stood on a high ground and looked at Winterwood City. At this moment, Winterwood City was peaceful. With Wu Ming's eyesight, although he was an assassin, he could still see the scenery of Winterwood City. At this moment, people were coming and going in Winterwood City. Shops were open as usual, people were rushing about as usual, and students were attending classes as usual. It was very peaceful. Wu Ming looked at the black dragon-shaped command seal on his hand and frowned. The seal is also useless, as if there's no black mud in this world. Then Wu Ming turned his head. If I have to say something, it's only because this great holy grail contains a large amount of black mud. However, this black mud doesn't possess the power of source. It's just pure evil. After Wu Ming arrived here, he asked Kalas to examine the great holy grail. Kalas discovered that apart from the pure evil of this world, there was nothing else in the great holy grail. My inspection is flawless. Please don't doubt me, master. A voice came from the black top hat on Wu Ming's head. It was Kalas' cold voice. Kalas was able to change her appearance according to Wu Ming's class. After all, Kalas was the one who changed her appearance into the golden green dragon horn. I'm sorry, Kalas. I'm not doubting you. Wu Ming apologized with a bitter smile. However, without the black mud, how did the black token bring me here? Wu Ming was distressed. Kalas didn't say anything. She didn't know the truth. Forget it. Let's go check if there's anything special about this world's Winterwood City. After saying that, Wu Ming turned into a black shadow and disappeared. In a Chinese restaurant, Wu Ming sat in his seat, waiting for his order. Although Wu Ming was still wearing a black leather jacket, black leather shoes, and a black top hat, the other people in the restaurant only treated Wu Ming as a weirdo. It didn't affect them much. Soon Wu Ming's Chinese dishes were served. Wu Ming began to eat heartily. The reason why Wu Ming came back to eat in this restaurant was that he happened to see his own country's dishes in a foreign country. After all, Wu Ming was adopted by an old man in China. Before this, Wu Ming had explored the entire Winterwood City. However, Wu Ming didn't find anything wrong. Soon Wu Ming finished his meal. No matter how you look at it, it's strange. Wu Ming leaned on the chair and began to talk to himself. Wu Ming, of course, said that there was no special event or trace of the black mud. In any case, the mark on Wu Ming's hand wouldn't lie to Wu Ming, right? The black mud had no consciousness. At this time, a priest came to the restaurant. Boss, a serving of mapo tofu. After saying that, the priest directly sat at the table closest to the door. Master, that person has a sacred mark on his hand. Kalas suddenly said. Wu Ming took a closer look. There was indeed a mark on the back of the priest's hand that looked like a blood clot. Only the qualified magicians chosen by the Great Holy Grail could possess such a thing. A master who didn't summon a servant would possess a stigmata. And when the master summoned a servant, the stigmata would become a command incantation. And the priest seemed to have noticed that someone was observing him. He turned his head to look at Wu Ming's direction. However, all he saw was a table full of Chinese dishes and a stack of Japanese yen. There was no one on the chair. Was it an illusion? The priest was puzzled. But when he saw the mapo tofu on the table, the priest no longer paid attention to that direction. Instead, he focused on the mapo tofu. On the street, Wu Ming pressed down on his black hat and said with some surprise, I didn't expect that priest to be so vigilant. Wu Ming used his assassin's agility to leave the restaurant the moment the priest turned his head. By the way, those Japanese yen were taken by Wu Ming from some rich families. Of course, Wu Ming left some gold as an exchange. According to the information, now should be the time of the Holy Grail War. That person is likely to be one of the masters of this Holy Grail War. Kalas said. Previously, when Wu Ming explored Winterwood City, he found out that the date was 1994. That was the time when the Fourth Holy Grail War began. In Ilya's world, the Holy Grail War was stopped and was never held again. However, it was different in this parallel world. If there were no accidents, the Holy Grail War should be held normally now. Kalas, I suddenly have a new idea. Suddenly Wu Ming smiled. Kalas did not say anything. She knew that her master's bad taste was about to start again. Wu Ming came to the big hole in the Yuzhong mountain. Wu Ming took out some materials from his black ripples and began to draw a magic circle. It was the same magic circle as when Wu Ming came to this world. That's right, Wu Ming decided to summon the heroic spirits to participate in the Holy Grail War. Anyway, he had the command seal black mark in his hand. The only uncertain part is the Holy Grail War. Maybe someone's wish caused the black mud to come, so we have to participate. Wu Ming earnestly said to Kalas. You're just interested, master. Kalas mercilessly ridiculed. How could that be? Isn't this a good opportunity to summon a servant and also summon Gil from Ilia's world? Wu Ming smiled. Okay, let's begin. After saying that, Wu Ming took out a clay plate from the black ripples beside him. This was something that Wu Ming had exchanged with Zelik. Wu Ming let young Gil drop the first blood to facilitate the summoning. Fill it up, fill it up, fill it up, fill it up. Cycle after cycle, then 5. However, when it's full, it's time to abandon it. Declare, thou shalt listen to my command, and my life is with thy sword. Answer the call of the Holy Grail. If you are willing to follow this will and this principle, then respond. I hereby swear that I am willing to accomplish all good deeds in the world, and I am willing to exterminate all evil deeds in the world. Thou shalt be the 7 days of the 3 spirits of words, from the wheel of inhibition, the guardian of the Libra. Following Wu Ming's spiritual words, the magic circle glowed, and a violent hurricane swept everything around it. In an instant, the clay plate in Wu Ming's hand glowed. In an instant, a figure appeared in the center of the magic circle. Long time no see, Hianriyang, said the figure. Wu Ming was dumbfounded. Chapter 320. Wu Ming was dumbfounded, but he did summon Gilgamesh. Looking at the figure that didn't look like a young Gil walking out of the dust, Wu Ming was silent. Although this Gilgamesh was an adult version, and although he couldn't rule out the possibility that young Gil had used a class card to fuse with himself and return to his adult form, but the Gilgamesh standing in front of Wu Ming was a woman, and there was no doubt that this Gilgamesh was the Gilgamesh that Wu Ming met. There was no doubt about it. At this moment, the female Gilgamesh was somewhat similar to when Angelica used the Gilgamesh class card. Her lower body was covered in golden armor, and a red cloak fluttered from her waist. Her upper body was still naked, and the red lines were stuck to the queen's sparkling waist. Her upper body was only covered by a black unlined shirt that could only cover her breasts. Her neck and wrists were adorned with golden accessories, and only one side had shoulder armor and gauntlets. Her ears were adorned with large golden earrings, and her hair was spread out. Her delicate and beautiful face, coupled with her arrogant red eyes looking at Wu Ming, slowly gave off the aura of a queen. How boring, Hianriyang. Have you fallen to the point of being an assassin? The female Gilgamesh, or rather the female version, mocked Wu Ming. Well, although I've thought about summoning other Gilgamesh, at least I still have a trace of young Gilgamesh's blood. Why? Wu Ming rubbed his forehead with one hand, and said rather helplessly. Just another young version of this king, and you want to compete with this king? Ridiculous. This king has already sent you back to the constellation of heroes. Queen Gil said domineeringly. Forget it. Wu Ming gave up struggling. After a while, Wu Ming learned that when Wu Ming summoned the servant, young Gil did receive the message, and was excited to come to this world. However, Wu Ming got one thing wrong, and that was Queen Sparkle. Although the clay tablet contained young Gil's blood, and was suitable for summoning young Gil, the Wu Ming itself was a very good artifact for the Queen of Summoning, Glint. Even if you came to a parallel world, changed your class and added a curse, your nature will not change. This king has already made up his mind. This king won't come out even if you don't act as a holy relic to summon him. However, if it's you, no one can win against this king. The queen responded to Wu Ming domineeringly. No. As expected of my direct disciple, Ahaha. Wuming laughed awkwardly. However, compared to Queen Sparkle or the adult version of Gilgamesh, the young Gil or the old version, the returned king, of Gilgamesh was easier to get along with. The adult version of Gilgamesh's personality was a bit bad. A minute of silence for the poor Gil. Since I've already summoned you, that's it. I originally wanted to summon Gil, who possessed a class card, but now it seems that you and I have formed a contract. Feeling that his magic was connected to Queen Sparkle and was supplying her, Wuming felt helpless. Fortunately, my assassin class isn't considered orthodox. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to pay for your magic consumption. As the top heroic spirit existence, Gilgamesh's consumption was naturally huge. If an assassin were to supply Queen Sparkle with magic, wouldn't it be draining her magic and sending her back to the heroic spirit palace? It's your honor to be able to let this king come, Hienryong. Even if you are this king's teacher, you should be proud. Queen Sparkle said proudly. Her small face was shining with unusual happiness. Didn't you say that you snatched it? Of course, Wuming didn't say this sentence. After all, he knew his own disciple. If he said that, Queen Sparkle would be angry again. Gil, you should understand the current situation. Wuming cleaned up the traces on the scene. After all, summoning a servant here couldn't be seen by others. In any case, he had to respect the rules of the Holy Grail War. Even if it's you, you should call this king king. But seeing that you are this king's teacher's clone, this king allows you to call this king by his name. Queen Sparkle's face was arrogant. She looked at Wuming with a "you can be proud" look. That's why it's hard to get along with Jill when she's at her peak. Wuming sighed helplessly. This king has learned the specific situation from another young version of this king. It's about some black mud. With this king here, Hienryong, you just have to lie down obediently. Wuming didn't say anything about the arrogant Queen Sparkle. Anyway, he had already gotten used to it. It was just that he couldn't get used to it for a while. Now that the black mud hasn't appeared, I suspect that someone used the Great Holy Grail, so I decided to participate in this Holy Grail War. This is also the reason why I summoned you. After all, in order to become a master, one must summon a servant. Therefore, Wuming chose to summon young Gil, and used the black dragon-shaped mark on his hand as a command spell. If he encountered the other 7 servants and masters, he could just say that he was an extra cheater. As a result, Wuming really became a master and occupied a spot. In fact, Wuming was worried about whether he would also occupy a spot. After all, he was summoned using the Great Holy Grail ritual. With the Holy Grail's nature, who knows if there would be any accidents? I always feel that if there is an accident, it must be caused by the master. Kalas complained. It shouldn't be. Wuming was a little uncertain. He didn't find any abnormalities when he came to this world. And the magicians were also very stable. Strictly speaking, he was the abnormal one. Well, since you're already involved, then let's go through with it. Wuming smiled, but this smile was particularly gloomy. Kalas, I haven't seen you for a long time. At this time, Queen Blink heard Kalas's voice and greeted Wuming's top hat. I'm deeply honored, Hero King. Kalas said very politely. After all, Kalas was not Wuming. Towards a great king, Kalas was still very respectful. Well, now I have to find a place to stay, so it's convenient for the next action. Wuming said and began to walk toward the big hole. Then you do well, Hienryong. This king will be here waiting for your good news. Queen Blink said, turned into golden particles and disappeared. This was the spiritual form of a servant. Not only Gilgamesh could do it, but also Wuming could do it. After all, Wuming was now in the state of a servant transformed by the Great Holy Grail. Then you stay here first, I'll go to Winterwood City to buy a house. Wuming waved his hand. As Wuming moved toward the downtown of Winterwood City, Kalas' voice came from Wuming's head. I always feel that the future is worrying. You're tuning in to the Limei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.